for you, I keep my legs apart and forget about my tainted heart. And I will never ever be the first to say it, but still I know I would do it. Push button, pull a trigger, go mountain, jump off a cliff. 'Cause you know, baby, I love you a little bit. You would do it, you would say it, you would mean it. We could do it, it was you and I. Not only I think I'm a little bit in love with you. Only for a little bit in love with you. Only for a little bit in love with you. Only for a little bit.
Hello and welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great to see you all. Great to see the chat as usual. Welcome to another well-read review. Going to be talking about comic books. I know it's the end of the world, and here we are talking about comics as it should be. As it should be. A lot of mixed opinion already in the chat. Chat getting heated. I'm feeling the hate. I love it. I thrive on it. Give me more. Let's jump in and say hello. Who do we have? We've got Darren Wagner. Nice. Thanks, Darren. I assume you're talking about the music that I chose. Everybody loves it, clearly. I have the best musical taste ever. They're huge. All right, we got Jaff Stylor. He says hi. Hey. Hello. Michael, no fair peeking. Actually, you're welcome in the chat while we review it. Just most people, they prefer to save their appearances until after. But yeah, Michael is spoiling the surprise, even though it's written all over the thumb. We're talking about Lucent Painted Death today. And we will have Bancroft on a little bit later to dig into all the dirt and all the lore of the Lucent. So stay tuned for all of that. We got Paulus Arts. He says, bow. See, Dale A recognizes my exquisite palette when it comes to the musical selections of the show. Thank you very much, Dale A, for your contribution to the chat. Mrs. Dillard draws. Oh, we better get Dillard on quick, because I think she might be wondering where her husband is. We've got him tonight, Mrs. Dillard. So he's safe. We'll bring him home in one piece. Don't you worry. He won't be passed out in any men's room or anything. So no worries there. We got Aldous. It says, I apologize in advance. How dare you? Betrayal. He says, for Well-Read's musical selections. Yes. Do apologize for me. I'll be doing it all night. I intend to continue. He says also greetings and evening all. Yes. Greetings and evening to all. Twitless C, he likes it. He likes the trance-esque tracks. Let's just make this whole stream about the fact that I picked the best songs ever. Good old reliable, well-read, carrying the torch for his Tampa teammate. Indeed. Met nothing but great people at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. So all of you better recognize. Most awesome con ever. Let's see. Paulus reminds us no crack smoking. Yes. All of you in the back, do not smoke crack before you review comic books. Please, I implore you. Just to check, making sure that you're all behaving, let's bring you on and subject you to questioning. This first one is prime list on my suspect list. Prime suspect on my list of suspects. Top of the list, we've got Twitless.
What did I do? What am I being accused of? Do I get legal representation? What is this? What does the suspect speak of?
All very likely things a crack smoker would say. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Our suspicion grows, Twitless. We know you're up to something back there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to play good cop, bad cop with you. So I've been the bad cop. Let's bring in the good cop. Here's all this. That's how you get a man to confess.
Good cop, dead cop.
No, not at all. But yeah, it's great to be here as always. And blow winds and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanes. To quote King Lear, because that's going to be my first complaint about this book, is this Shakespeare.
Ah, there's
what do you think
Shakespeare.
about the Bard?
Oh, I don't have any problem with the Bard. Apparently Bancroft does, and we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Well, the man who knows all about the Bard, please bring on Diller Draws.
I had to put away my crack pipe. I didn't know there was rules.
There are rules here, sir.
Thanks for having me well read. I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. Even the crack smokers are welcome. So you're more than welcome here.
As long as you film the right part of the urinal.
Just make sure you keep those chalky lips off the camera, and we'll be fine. We'll be fine. All right. Now that the stream is sufficiently awkward and already in mounds of trouble, bound to be struck and judged harshly, let's talk about the Lucent. Right. You guys all like Ethan. Damn. I'm reading.
Take two.
You guys all like Michael Bancroft, don't you?
Yeah, I consider him a friend for sure.
Oh yeah. It's a great
in
guy.
that parasocial way that I also consider you a friend.
Oh, you can't.
Honestly, without being too weird about it, I really think that he represents the best of us in terms of indie creator in the promotional sense. Like who would be better? Like he's nice, congenial. When I did meet him in Tampa, like he acted like he knew me, even though I've just been chat here and there. Just a real swell guy. Like I said, just really the best of us regarding the indie comics space.
It just sounds more insulting as you like double down. Like it's the most backhanded compliments.
It is.
He's not American.
He is a foreigner.
I think it
and
is.
That shows a lot in this book.
Oh, it does. But I think it is. Twitless is right. That is the best thing you can say about him because it is the most apt. It's the most accurate. That being said, it's almost too true. He's too affable. He's too nice.
Yeah.
He needs to have a little bit of a filter on some of his takes because at times, in my opinion, it just becomes bland. Like you know what you're going to get. From his takes on his show and what he presents and what he promotes, there's no, you have to make the decisions. He certainly doesn't do it for you with what he launches or closes out.
And that's fair from if you're from a I guess criticism's point of view. But I think that from what I've seen from Bancroft is that that's not the role he wants to choose. He wants to be just the the advocate essentially, and he leaves some of those other roles to other people. I think that's kind of the impression I get, and I think that's okay for different people to do different things in the space. Like we're
for sure.
clearly parking our car on the the critical side of engagement.
Yeah, it's just fundamentally opposed to what I view, which is anything that I promote, anything that I would launch, anything that I would put my name behind or involve myself with is a representation of me. So that filter is very high.
See, there's somebody in the chat right now. When you said who does it best, Phil Diaz.
Mhm.
Absolutely, man. No, Phil does a good job.
Bancroft is a great guy. I too consider him a friend, but he comes a far second to the Diaz brothers.
We don't have to do friend rankings today. That's not.
Can we?
I'm not ranking friends. I'm ranking who does it best. Who does the indie books best?
All right, where do you guys rank Camel?
This is going to be like, Camel's great, man.
Who's that?
Oh gosh,
Camel's got no filter.
Yeah, clearly. He's in there in the chat saying that we're all sucking up to Bancroft.
Dillard, what do you rank
from
Camel
our
Moon
books?
on your friend list?
I don't know Camel Moon.
He doesn't know a camel.
You should
Sweet.
remedy that.
Okay.
Everybody needs a little camel.
My DMs are open.
And I thank RJ Reynolds for that check they just sent me.
Yeah. Well, I think Bancroft is too nice of a guy. There's something suspicious about him. So I say let's dig into this guy a little bit deeper. Let's look into his work, his background here. So he's put out this book, also highly suspicious. It's called Lucent Painted Death. So something a guilty man would name his book. Guilty of what? I don't know yet. We'll find out. But he crowdfunded it himself. So Bancroft has his own crowdfunding platform. It's called thelucentcomic.com. And he did fairly well, mainly just promoting it on his own channel to his own audience. And this is 958 backers that he gained just from his own audience, and $76,000.
And if you add the Kickstarter and Indiegogo counts that, I think he's over 1,000 backers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this surpassed his first book, Waking Dream, which had about 1,024 backers, I believe, when I glanced at it. So yeah, he's rocking and rolling. And then also he's selling these books as well. So if you guys want to go and pick them up after hearing this review, which I have no idea which way it's going to go. So, maybe you guys are going to hate it.
Can I say, before we get into the review, I want to just review the fact that this is a great way of, whether you're crowdfunding, crowd selling, however you want to split that, having a shop on the back end where people who discover your work a little bit later can catch up and order copies easily is really the way that we should be doing business here. And there are some books where it's like, hey, I kind of like that, but like I heard about it or learned about it too late, and then it just becomes kind of a headache to just track it down. And if the whole point of this is to read the books, it's just really best practice to make it so that there's some sort of storefront where people can actually, access your stuff.
Yeah,
no, I completely agree. And my hat's off to Mike for doing this. Everybody should be doing this. If you've got a customer base of over 100 that you've repeated, I think this is the way to go. You've got to have some landing page where people can go. You can't rely on other companies that are going to change ownership, that have different philosophical guides that are either going to drift in and out of what they want to promote, like we've seen across the numerous crowdfunding sites. If you go with this is right there, and it's all the only thing you got to cover is your overhead cost. So you control it. You can't argue with that.
And I think it was fairly straightforward to set up. He uses the Shopify store template. So when you pay a subscription fee, you get to use their tools, and it makes it very easy to assemble everything. You just move around a lot of images to get your website configured. And then they handle all the security and all the payment processing. So all the heavy lifting is also done for you. So absolutely go and check it out, guys, if you get a chance. Now that all of that is out of the way, guys, let's start. Can someone please give me a summary? Painted Death. What is this book about? Twitless.
In a world where waking dreams contain hidden power, One young woman finds herself carrying the weight of destiny on her shoulders. Ella Forsyth finds herself on the run for her life after demonstrating a flash of incredible power. Pursued by agents of the Luminary, an ancient secretive order, Ella is protected by her dream lover, Damon Spector. But is everything what it seems? Dive into the dream with the Lucent Painted Death.
Is that an apt summary, Aldous? What do you think? Did he cover all the bases?
Yes and no. And I think we'll get into this when we get into the book. If you're looking for an overarching like summation of what this is, it's an extension of the first book. I happened to review the first book here quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And my main issue with it was that it didn't tell a complete story. It doesn't have like one arc within it that then can be extended. It ends on a cliffhanger that you really still don't know anything. And at the end of this, you know a little bit more, but this book has all the same issues, in my opinion, as the last one.
All this, I completely, I can basically just say, I just, back up everything you said there, that it describes a lot of what I see going on here. I would say that it's a very cinematic work. And so if you put the first two volumes together, you get the first opening exposition and chase scene that you'd see in a lot of thriller films. It really is paced kind of like a thriller film, but because we're getting it in comic book installments, that pacing causes a lot of issues overall.
Yeah, if I had to describe this, because there's a lot of sections to this book where you'll get like 16 pages of I think it's 16 pages of prologue, if my notes are correct. And then you move into the meat of the story. And within the meat of the story, there's a whole lot of setup. And then that's another chunk. And then you get some action. Then you get an action beat, a setup for an action, and then a secondary setup section for an action beat, and then an action beat. And for like how I took it was, this really feels like a European serialized story that would be in like Metal Hurlant, or something like that, in sections, and then it's been assembled. It doesn't feel like it's a coherent story. It feels very, very serialized, and then it was assembled, not a coherent arc. In that way, it differs from the first one, because in the first one, I definitely saw a coherent arc. I don't see that here. I know he's trying to lean harder into the Euro style of storytelling, but it's like that Euro serialization through the metric of I would say a mid-90s style aesthetic. Maybe.
So the trouble there is that if you want to do, because like you could do like what they often do in Bond is an A, which is the album, right? Which is the kind of essentially the trade paperback. And I think that when the Lucent is collected in its full trade paperback form, my judgment will be completely different.
I completely agree with
that.
But
I will say that if you're going to do the sort of heavy metal style, you have to release more often. The whole point of how serialized storytelling works in that format is that you're getting at least an installment per month. But
right, and I think this to stop you there. I think this would work better from the bridge of when the last one came out to now, is if it would have been released in these very evident chunks that are they set stages. So you've got this prequel or the prologue that's set in 2700 BC about Gilgamesh, which, by the way, huge compliments to Michael for his references within that. He did an excellent job of callbacks to Tablet 9. Beautiful work. And then we move into the setup and the continuation of the story from the second one, and we get another chunk. If he would have serialized that and released them in individuals, even as a webcomic, and then assembled it and released the final version, I think it would have worked better, if that makes sense. But it just, as it was, it felt even more disheveled than the first one.
Dillard, what's your take? Do you have areas where you disagree with the other two reviewers?
Yeah, I do, actually.
All right,
like,
let's hear
when
it.
you talk about cinematic, like the prologue especially, I loved it. I found no faults in it. But then it moves from that epic adventure, especially when he's telling I forget the name of the guy that he's going to go see about
Unapishni.
about extending his life. when he's telling him about the stuff he had to go through to get here. It was great. I was like, oh man, this is good. And the whole story almost seems like like this Jason Priestley looking guy and Elle, like they almost seem like a TV show, like a serial, like a CSI. Like I don't get a lot of personality from any of them in the modern times, but the prologue and the history just reeks with personality.
The lore here, and again, back up Aldous' point, it's very clear that Bancroft is talented, both as I would say as a draftsman and as someone who's looking into lore and mythology to inform his work. So, like, the evidence of that is very clearly on display. Some really deep cuts to both literature and mythology in this book, and it's very clear that not only is he's not just dropping those as hints. It's very clear he's meant to set this up for, I don't know, volume 6, 7, 8, 9, where these things. It's very clear he's weaving a tapestry, and eventually these threads will eventually come together. The issue that
I mean, like even just the small, because it's not that he's just pulling deep cuts, right? It's the story of the guy that gave him a lift from the city, the Garden of the Gods, right? Just across the sea to the island. Just that guy and the way he talks it about, how he got drunk and now he's ashamed of himself. Like he's putting his own little flair on this stuff, and I'm interested in that story. Just everything about it was great.
And I disagree with that. It's 16 pages of prologue that could have been cut down, in my opinion, to like 8.
Yeah, but I think it should have been 55 pages of just that.
Right. So my issue
I do
here,
agree with that part was totally engaging. And I really would have liked to see more depth in that part of it, because when it got to the main, we jump into an action, and then we can go back to that when we get to that portion. But I mean, you've got and again, the callbacks of those first 16 pages are magnificent. Michael definitely did his work. I've read Gilgamesh a number of times, and he's got everything in there that you want to see. We know that it's after Induku died, because Gilgamesh is dressed in hides, and the dialogue calls back to that in a number of nice, suggestive ways. These first pages are really, really well written, but it's like stretching taffy. It feels a little thin, and I would have liked to seen it condensed a little bit.
If more. I can split the difference, we don't know yet, because of how Bancroft is clearly telling a woven story, how important this is. Like I said, this whole 16-page thing could end up being very, very important to the story he's weaving. However, because of we can only read what's in front of us, right? So we only have these first 2 volumes to go on so far. We don't have that whole tapestry. Because of that, and because the story is meant to be about the modern day, it's very natural to feel like this is unnecessary. And if it takes me 10 years, because of how these books come out, for me to go, oh, that's why we had 16 pages of Utnapishtim and, Enkidu and the rest, there's some issues with how the storytelling is being brought to us in this format.
Absolutely.
Well, how is it in terms of something that crosses from the last issue to introduce this one? Like, is maybe that the reason why it feels drawn out, is that it's trying to bridge the two? Or is it strictly setting up this story, but doing it in a way that it just seems like it's prolonged?
It's the prolonged. It's the prolonged part. So
everything about this feels stretched. Everything feels stretched, from the intro to the setup to the action. You get to the end of this book, and literally not much has happened.
Yes,
and you have an immense amount of exposition. And we're in book 2. And my main issue, it's the same. It's all of my critiques are the same as with issue 1. And I like Mike a lot. He's a friend. And I want him to, I know that somewhere in this, there's a beautiful story. And like Twitless said, after all the volumes are out, I'm going to praise it. I know I'm going to praise it. But right now, with these slices, my issue is nothing happens. Everything is stretched. And I'm sure it's for a reason. But man, this is not what I want to see in a graphic novel. I want to see each book have an arc, and that arc completes. I can read book 1 and I get a story, but there's hints of a further story, and then book 2 picks up on where book 1 left off, and there's another story, but that builds on another one, and it's arc-based storytelling.
a good example of how this was done would be Jeff Smith's Bone.
Yep,
which
that's a
is
great example.
very different story, but the idea of you have kind of your A plot line happening, stories that are happening with the bones, but then slowly creating this very mythological kind of a mysterious underpinning that then comes to a crescendo. But every installment of Bone that you got was following kind of the best practices of comics for the most part.
Right.
So it's and
well, you might have an arc. Like let's say you have a sub arc that's only in acts 1 and 2 of book 1 that doesn't. It seems like a throwaway arc. It has absolutely nothing that factors into anything in books 1 or 2. But then book 3 comes out, and in halfway through act 2, that arc somehow comes back around and arcs in, and you go, "Oh my gosh, that's why that was important." And then you have other things that don't seem important at the time, or that seem vitally important, that end up being a dead end. And it was just a suggestion that, oh, well, you're going to take it in this direction, but it never goes anywhere, or it goes someplace that you didn't think it went. That's when I'm talking about arc-based storytelling. It's each story has threads, and how do those threads tie into the next issue?
If I could boil it down even more simply, perhaps I would say that between books 1 and 2, these are just straight facts from the current day plot line, because we have the sort of in the past, mythological connections that are being set up. But as in the diegetic layer of the current moment, what's currently happening in the story with Ella, we haven't yet fully gotten through a 24-hour period yet. So because the story begins with volume 1, and it's basically her kind of going to sleep. So there's an evening, a dream, and then she kind of wakes up in the middle of the night still. And we're still currently in that evening with the chase scene and everything. So in terms of 2 books have moved, we still haven't gotten through like the first inciting incident moment. We haven't moved past that. Secondly, we still know almost nothing about most of the characters. And thirdly, when the characters do talk about things, they're incredibly elliptical. And it's like, oh, that guy, he can't catch you. Why? Because then if he catches you, he'll do the thing that'll be bad for people. Well, what's that? You don't want to know. And I'm like, after 180 pages, so the first volume is 80, this one is 100. So after 100, almost 200 pages, to have those be the facts on the ground for the story, for a serial storytelling, that's a problem.
Right. In my opinion, unless this is a serialized story that's coming out every month, and then it's going to build, because the anticipation is constantly there, but you lose everything about that when you're releasing every 2 to 3 years.
This could easily be again, more credit to Bancroft. I could easily have seen this be a limited series of like Image books, where it's like issues 1 through 12 in your local comic book shop coming out every month.
I don't think they're floppies. I think he needs to find, if he could, he needs to find like where he could get this submitted in a monthly. But the problem is there aren't hardly any monthlies anymore. So you're gonna, and this goes back to another issue that's come up recently, is, well, you can't monetize webtoons. No, man, just innovate, create, and overcome, man. Find a solution. And with he's got 2 books out now. He's got a significant customer base, and they're good. They're just, it's this little thread of just, it's so slow. If you could give me 12 pages, even every 2 months of continuated story, I think this would be a banger, because then you're moving it along. It just feels like you wait an indefinite amount of time and you get a drop, and the drop doesn't meet your expectations. But with that being said, I'm talking about story. I do want to compliment one thing. Michael's art and his color work is leaps and bounds above where book 1 was. He has made so many, like, there are so many stunning panels on this, stunning imagery.
Before we get too far there, I want to make sure that we loop Dillard in for any other story comments.
I did want to hear his take on the loose threads, and maybe he views it a little bit differently. What did you think, Dillard? Did you read the first book, by the way?
I did, yeah. Both.
Okay.
I didn't feel like there are loose threads. I just feel like not enough is happening. Like when you're talking about, oh, we can't do that because then they would find me, and if they find me, then it'd be bad for everybody. Blah, blah, blah. And then there's this sequence where it's, I don't know if you guys seen the movie, the Harry Potter movies, where they split the last book into 2 films.
Right.
And it's like there's this big portion where they're basically just on the run. The 3 kids are on the run, and they're just sitting around in coffee shops, and then somebody finds them and they make an escape, and then they're sitting around doing something else and pondering, and something else happens.
They're sitting in the woods there for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what this feels like. That this modern day portion of it where she's asking him, well, what's happening? I'm not going to tell you. Well, I'll let somebody else tell you. And that, dude, it goes on for pages and pages. Yeah. And I love the artwork. I mean, this guy, the background work is incredible.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
But I think that the background work is center stage and the story is playing second fiddle.
There are individual pages in this that are, they're absolutely stunning. The lighthouse the Eiffel Tower, that where you actually get back into modern day, which is a page that was heavily used in promotion, and he really did a good job on it. That page is absolutely beautiful. It's gorgeous. The detail work, everything about it, setting the tone, setting the flow of the panel, the flow of how a splash should do, everything works in that. And he's got numerous pages and panels throughout this book that work. But man, and the scene of Ella floating, man, it's over and over. The helmet, I love the helmet shot.
Right.
There's so many pages in this that work so incredibly well, and then we get a lot of stretching that taffy before we get to something else that really works well. Like there's 2 pages where they're talking in an ambulance, like that.
No, dude, there's like 7 pages of him convincing her to leave the ambulance.
Oh, I'm just saying, there's 2 pages of them just in the ambulance. That's like half a page. Get her out of the ambulance. You can cut all this down. But like the 2 pages that are after the ambulance, he does these 2 beautiful 6-panel grids that I hate them for what they do to story, because they're not doing anything for story, but the art, the layout, the lettering, everything about them works. Like those 2 pages alone are brilliant, and it almost makes me angry, because as I get further in this, I'm like, Mike, you know what you're doing. You've got the talent. Like, why are you stretching the story out?
I have some art gripes.
Well, before art, can we?
Okay,
I did want to ask quickly. Also, the kind of action, because you guys mentioned that it has kind of like an action movie feel, but when I look at these scenes, I'm not seeing like Fast and Furious. I'm seeing
thriller. It's action thriller. It's very much action thriller.
Well, also like with a very European flavor. Like it's, I don't know, like a French Connection meets an Inception or something like that. Like, what's your take on the kind of action?
The action is very, very TV show, low budget action, and that's my main gripe, is that it's a comic book. You can do anything, as really evident by what you did in the prologue. You can do anything. You can make these stories grand, but the action feels like we're on a budget. Can't really have great special effects.
There's a moment where they're clearly being kind of chased by this, unstoppable force or seemingly unstoppable force that's being set up from issue 1, and like they're in the car, and she's basically asking like what's going on, and my mind just played the that moment with Sarah Connor and Reese from the first Terminator, where it's just, android from the future, out to kill you. It will not stop until you are dead, and just spells out the plot in like very quickly, and you have exactly what you need to sink your teeth into. And in this case, it was, well, I can't tell you. It was just like, no, just tell me. Right. Here are the bad guys. They're after you. They can do this, and if they get you, this will happen. Like, boom. As
a carryover to that is later in that, like after things calm down, Reese stops the car, right? And he turns and he goes, look, the early models had rubber skin and we could spot them. These new ones, this is something new. Like, it looks like us. It has bad breath. It sweats. Like, and it adds even more exposition in, but you have that moment where you're like, oh my God, like things are making sense. And then they add even more detail. That doesn't happen here.
Right.
We never get that. We get the suggestion. We constantly get the suggestion of and it's always, we have to go now. I'll explain it later.
Right.
And so you never get that moment where Reese calms down and gets them in a position where they have 5 minutes to take a breath and go, okay, let me explain to you. And it's going to sound insane.
That's probably volume 3. And again, the issue here is that we were 200 pages in, and this needed to happen earlier, in my opinion.
Right, and I guess
from what we're getting.
going back, because I know some of the people are talking about, well, it's a web comic. What about the pacing? My biggest issue in this whole thing is there's the callback. We had the friends from issue 1, and they're sitting in a bar and they get a phone call, and it's 2 pages. It does nothing. Like, why is that in this book?
Which one?
It's where they get the phone call. We're at the bar, page 20 in the digital copy, 20 and 21.
All right, because one of them. Okay, so if you're talking about, okay, so this one here is a bit of a this one is easy to miss, I think, but the 2 people whose faces are obscured, the reason why this is here is because they're working for spoiler alert. These 2 people who we don't see their faces, they show up later in the book when you do see their faces, and they're working for the marshal.
No, I understand that,
okay.
but this
so
this to me would be a retroactive reveal, that because you leave it as how did they find us, and then in issue 3 you do a retroactive of this scene, and then that's how they found it, because you want to keep it moving. This is you slowed everything down to make one explanation that I don't think is needed. I think you want to keep things moving because, again,
I did like
bit that does happen, accentuate the action if you're going to keep it going.
Okay, I will say I do like the fact that this is a nice little payoff that you had to, like, you know, that he didn't spell out for you. You had to basically just pick it up from the visuals alone. And the fact that that's just purely visual storytelling without really text, it's just you have to recognize these guys from the back, and then when you see them from the front, correlate, and then understand a plot detail from that. I like that Bancroft is using the language of comics with that. Like that's something I'm not, maybe there's a way to do it a little better with the pacing. I'm just saying I do like this bit because of how that pays off for people who are paying attention, and that encourages you to pay attention to the artwork. So I do like that aspect of it.
Dillard, would you like to interject?
Not at this time, no.
Can I mention a couple of my art gripes?
Yeah, let's do art.
So the positives, I'll say, it reminded me of a Lionel Francis Yu. So very a kind of on the scale of getting closer to photorealism, but still fun art. So I definitely like that part. The gripes that I have are it gets too photo referenced in places. Because it's too photo referenced, at least to me, we get a lot of very stiff looking shots at times. And that is especially egregious when it comes to action shots. Whenever the characters are in the middle of doing like a really epic action, it feels like we have a really stiff kind of photo referenced moment. And then it's just, comics are meant to kind of be hyper real, and especially in a comic that's supposed to be about dreams and like dream walking, I do find it perplexing that such a photorealistic choice was being made. It kind of reminds me of Inception to an extent, but one of the gripes that people had with Inception was the fact that it was a very clinical interpretation and vision of what a dream story should be like. And if you think about, creators like, Ditko or Starlin, or like even in our scene, like Matt Krotz's style with Kyrie is very dream surreal like and very fitting
fluid.
for it. Yeah. It's something that you could imagine being, dream trippy and stuff. And so this is a very, maybe a taste thing, but I was kind of like, really? Like this is the dream story.
Well, I guess to extenuate on that, Twitless, and it irritates me that we're agreeing so much. I just want to make that clear.
Make it stop.
Page 33 is both one of my favorite pages and infuriates me about this book because it shows what Michael is capable of doing with this beautiful distortion of reality around the dream sequence occurring. And it's how everything's warping around it is absolutely beautiful. And it pisses me off that I don't see more of this in this book. This is kind of what I want to see, is there's so much aspects of the dream to this, but we only really get a couple of moments where he's really playing with it and doing anything really fun. And this is one of those. And it's to your point where, yes, it's photorealistic, but you've got that beautiful distortion. And I love that crane. The parking garage alone is fantastic, but the crane is beautiful where the structure's warping out and peeling back.
It's a blink and you'll miss it though. Like if you're just
kind
of like,
and that's what I'm saying is I want more of this.
Yeah.
it bothers me that I spent time on this page, and even this page, like, it feels very top heavy with those 3 inset panels and the 3 bottom panels. Like, just let this sing sometimes. Just take a step back, just pull back just a little bit and let them sing. And this is a page that I would truly let sing with the lead in and the outlaw. I don't think you need some of that, but that's my take.
Dillard, I know you want to comment about art. Am I correct?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I do. There's little hints that this story is going to get really good. And that's, I mean, overall, like my overall takeaway from this is like, I've seen him do it in little snippets here and there in the prologue and tiny little things. But overall, I don't get a lot of story, whether it's characters or scenery or the action that's happening. I don't get a lot. But there's little things like that, like this crane happening, that is like, maybe this story, this modern story, is going to be as good as that tale that he hinted at in the beginning. Because, you know, it's like when you tell a story, you don't want to, you know, tell a story about something that sounded way cooler. I would rather see that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
You want to tell the story of the most important thing that has happened in this universe.
And that there is a danger inherent in what he's doing, because he's playing with Gilgamesh, which is an ancient epic. And when you're talking about ancient epics, they're ancient epics for a reason. It's still told and still read to this day because it is an epic. And when you play with that, you've got to make sure that the pieces that you're playing with are of the same level. And
right. So I'm really hopeful. Like he's doing not a good enough job of making me hopeful. And that's my problem with it, is that it looks like maybe this story that he's telling, the story of the Lucent that's happening in modern times, is going to be a better story than what's happened before. But I'm a little bit doubtful. The hope is there because I've seen him do it.
Well, so it's like we're into book 2 now. So like, as was stated earlier, we're 160, 180 pages into the story. You got to give me something to grasp a hold to. Otherwise, I'm going to drown, because there's nothing in the sea of exposition. So give me a life preserver. Give me something and give it to me now. And then give me hope that I'm going to get somewhere where there's a story. And I know he's going to do it. I just worry that it's going to take me 4 or 5 books into this before I get what I want.
And unless that's at least 5 years if it releases once a year. So like what we're talking about, just to be purely objective about this, and this is not just a Lucent issue. This applies to Cyberfrog. It applies to any of those other books, right? But if it takes 2 to 3 to 4 years to fulfill, you can't, in my opinion, use the exact same storytelling techniques that a monthly series uses and expect readers to have the same reading experience. That just doesn't make any sense. Because that requires you essentially to reread the previous volumes every time a new issue comes out. And that's just not the way reading's supposed to work. And no other medium would this be acceptable, where it's like, where you release installments so far apart that you have to just, essentially do your homework again to be like,
right. It'd be like Lost, but Lost seasons have 3 years apart from each season.
Or every episode. Is actually,
or every
episode. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. It's every episode. I do want to. We've been making some criticisms. Can I pull up a page that just is really, really, really good and is amazing? Sure. Can we go to page 30 of the digital?
To be fair, I've been trying to balance my critiques with my praise of this book.
No, you did a good job. I just want to point out this. We don't talk enough about the bad guys. But can you zoom in on that one? This isn't
a bloody figure here.
Zoom in a bunch, because you actually keep zooming. Zoom in until you see it. Okay, there you go. So we have a vaulted ceiling charnel house, and the villain is coming out of a pool of blood. So I just got to point out that sometimes you just got to point out when a awesome, cool bad guy moment happens, because setting up your antagonist is one of the most important things you can do for your story, because it's often what drives the conflict. And so this is really good. Very, very good, because without even saying a word, just the framing of that Gothic architecture, and it's all just skulls, and then he's coming out of a pool of blood, and you just know this is a awful monster, and and who represents a existential threat. Very well done.
Well, to add on to that, him being covered in blood, and you get the sense of it's viscous. It's not just flowing off of him; it's sticking to him. It's fantastic art, and this is my general praise for this book. It's drawn beautifully. I have very, very few problems with panels in this book. There are a few. Twitless keyed in on some of them, but this is fantastic. And if you look at like Matt Wagner's and Kelly Jones's Dracula the Impaler, Volume 1, there's a couple of moments that have this same heaviness of gore, and it's fantastic that he's calling back to that, and that speaks volumes for Mr. Bancroft's attention to detail and skill that he was able to do this. It is exquisite. At the same time, it's such a letdown because, again, like I want more of this, and I get like 8 pages of them in an ambulance.
Dillard, can you take us on a journey on your opinions about the art and thoughts on what Twitless said earlier about too much photorealism in the book?
I don't think there's too much photorealism. I think there's some choices of, like, when you draw someone, like, okay, go to the next page from this. Like, this is an epic page, right? Oh, he's coming out of a pool of blood, and then the page next to it.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. And then he washes himself off, and then if you could zoom in on the next panel.
Don't say the shrouded schwants, because nobody wants to see that.
No. Go down one more. Like, what is that fucking face?
No,
this guy does not look like a villain. This guy looks like a smarmy asshole, like somebody you would punch. He looks like a prick, but not even like a tough guy prick. He just looks like somebody who talks too much.
Well, if you look, actually, right before that, on if you scroll up to page 32 and page 33 on the digital, panel 1 is this is what I expect to see from Mike. 31.
Oh, all right.
This is a fantastic panel. I do not see enough people doing this. This is borderline end of Silver Age, start of Copper Age technique of showing transitions in a static panel. Mm-hmm. This is fantastic. She's getting dressed, and you're seeing the 3 stages of her getting dressed in a static image. Absolutely fantastic work. But I want to see a callback to this again, and this is the only page that I saw this in. Like, this is great. Where's more of this? To your point later, because
is somebody welding? Sorry, I heard sizzling.
The faces here are absolutely fantastic from what you get from the distance, and this is fine. It's perfectly fine. And then there's a couple other moments where Ella's face is absolutely beautiful, and then to Dillard's point, we get that like. It just seems almost like generic bad guy face. And the quote of like, he's punchable. That's perfect.
Yeah. It's like, I want to see somebody like, I'm not getting a lot of characterization. I'm not getting a lot of personality from them. And one of the easiest things to do is to draw them.
My question,
unique with personality, you know,
right? And if you go up to like the old lady,
but doesn't that happen? 1 second. It doesn't. Again, Dillard, isn't that a potential problem if you're leaning too heavily into photo reference? Because if you are drawing so heavily from the reference, you actually have to, as a cartoonist, right? Because what we're doing here is cartooning. The cartoonist would then exaggerate the features more and make it so that that guy looks more villainous because you are accentuating the eyebrows more than reality would. And that would actually impart something beyond, you go from the real to the
I get
hyper
that.
real.
But okay. Like if you were to take, let's say, a picture of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And this happens a lot in this book with I forget his name. I think it's Damon.
Damon?
Yeah.
Okay. He has absolutely no expression on his face.
It's all pensive.
Ever.
He's always pensive.
You know, like if you look, I could even turn my camera on right now, right? And he's always like this. Like, give me one of these. Oh, you know, like it, like make some expression, like what the like you can faces can be really animated, you know, and he's just not.
To be fair, he spends the majority of the book not explaining. He just keeps on. It's again, Twitless called it. It's the Kyle Reese moment. he's explaining to Sarah Connor, no, there's a terrible danger out there for you. And she keeps on asking the same question and he never answers it. And so you would think at a certain point,
Look, you see this right here? The whole I'm not going to answer face. Do this
right.
instead of that. Do this.
Does it? Let me catch you.
You know, like,
is he raising the roof?
Over emote, be an actor,
Well, and to counter that point, if you go up to page 26, we see that with Ella, that we got a couple of moments of Ella where you get a little bit of a quizzical expression and you see some emotion on her face. And so we get that with her, and I want to see more of that. Again, 26 and 27 are great examples of that. And also there's the progression of panels on those pages is, again, excellent. And again, it's frustrating because where is more of this?
So this here, is that what you're referring to?
If you pan out a little bit so you can see the full page, you get the reversal of her face in the mirror, and then you get her wiping her lip after she's yacked, and then you get a little bit of a quizzical look, and then you get the change of expression in Ella. It's subtle, but it's there, but we never get that in Damon. To Dillard's point. So
yeah, because with the guys, the girls, you got to be careful because if you give them too much expression, they look ugly. Yes. So the guys you can go ham with. Guys are just guys are not supposed to be hyper attractive all the time.
I feel like
they can be expressive.
I feel like manga gives you some examples where you can over exaggerate a female face and get away with it. And I'm just saying, I understand that you have to be careful with it, but I think you can walk that line.
Walking a line indeed. All right. So do we want to talk about where it climaxed, or it sounded like this didn't actually finish?
There is I would call there is a kind of climax to it. It's essentially the Matrix moment where it's like, dude, I've got powers. And she kind of uses her abilities in a very dramatic way, and then kind of passes out afterwards. And so you get a sort of a supernatural moment of climax. Oh, hey, she can actually do something, supernatural. We still don't know what that is.
Right.
It's something tied to dream walking, but it's still very, very vague. Right now, it just kind of looks like kind of a Matrix telekinesis, essentially.
This ties in, Twitless, to my favorite, both my favorite panel and my least favorite panel on the same page. And if you could go to page 50.
All right.
This is an example of Michael Bancroft's talent. If you scroll over to page 51 on the digital, panel 1, you're seeing the bad guy as projected through the refraction of a bottle of booze that's on the liquor stand. This is fantastic.
Yeah. And
then if you scroll down, this is so flat.
Yeah.
And this is it's at the end of the book, but it kind of sums up the book for me. I've got a panel I absolutely love that shows an immense amount of talent and a brilliant eye, because that's a cameraman's eye, right? That's a cinematographer's eye. You're going to take that shot and pan through the bottle, and then it reverses around from behind him. So it's great. Those are fantastic shots. And then I get this, which feels extraordinarily two-dimensional.
It looks CGI asset.
It's just so flat, and it's got no depth. And you're talking, it's less than 2 panels away from this brilliant shot through the liquor bottle, through the decanter.
Right.
And that's what kills me. And it sums up my assumption of this, that my whole takeaway from this book is there's so much I love, but every time I really get into the meat of something I love, it takes me away from it. And it pulls me away from it intentionally. And I don't understand why.
Well, it sounds like we should pull out early in this case and not quite finish. So maybe let's jump to final thoughts. What do you guys think? Twitless, let's start with you.
So the Lucent Painted Death is clearly, I think it's a work of passion done by a talented creator. It's very, very clear that Bancroft is a talented creator, because you have these examples that only a talented draftsman and storyteller could come up with, right? Some of these wonderful distortions, or the decanter, the framing of the villain in blood, and then the thoroughness in those moments is very clearly on display. So talent is very much coming across. The main problem that faces it, in my opinion, is kind of an existential one. Why is this story a comic? So far, it feels like this story would fit better in either a novel or film/TV series, because a novel would allow you to very quickly, not quickly, but it would allow you to just go into more depth for the story, and film would allow you to preserve the pacing of some of the action scenes better. The pitch of this story is a great one for comics. A taut, lore-driven thriller that takes place across a dreamscape. That's just a great pitch for comics. We don't, I think, do enough with dreams in comics, because what comics can do is have a dissonance between what you are shown and what you are told, because of the text and image on panel, and the fact that what is drawn on the panel is very subjective. So there's very fertile ground for dreamscape storytelling. But the execution in this case is just more mundane than I would really want it to be. My personal recommendations is for the creator to take another look at pacing and dialogue. I think the trade edition for the Lucent will be something very special. But for a serial story and the amount we see in each installment, we're just not getting enough so far.
Aldous, tell us your take.
It kills me to say this, but I agree with Twitless. I do disagree with him in one sense. I think this is a functional graphic novel. But I think for the direction that Michael's going, I think it needs to follow what I initially called out. Is at this point, it feels like a serialized story, and I would serialize it. I would be doing behind a paywall, or however he needs to do it, release these little 12 to 16 page segments at a time, and then drop the graphic novel, because that seems to be the intent. It seems to be following that format rather than a traditional, whether it's bande dessinée or a traditional Western graphic novel. I don't see, it's floating in between those two in a webcomic. And I think it needs to be a little bit faster paced. I think we need to see more of the dream sequence. We saw moments of it. We saw Damon do his dream punch, and we saw the one guy the bad guy break the guy's neck. But in the first issue, we saw some people do water seems to be a teleportation method. We saw some of that. That doesn't seem to be as prevalent here. We were really focused on the resultant of what Ella experienced. We don't see much else from that other than at the very end of the issue. So it's just moving incredibly slow. And I don't think that's the pacing that you want with this. I think there's a lot of fat that you could trim from this. And I think we can up the pacing a little bit to make it a little bit more engaging.
Dillard, give us your final thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think that I do agree with Twitless and Aldous that it's full on display of like this has so much potential. There's a lot of talent when it comes to Bancroft. And this is a story that I'm more interested in than in a lot of stories I've read. It's just there's not enough of the grand lore in modern times. I need him to start to give me what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. Like, there's this little scene where the gentleman's walking in and he uses, I don't know if it's just water or if it's liquid in general. I think he uses his tea or his coffee to go and do something across the room.
Yeah, he throws his coffee and he manipulates the coffee to go lock the door.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, but it's like 2 panels.
Yeah. And I'm like, I need more of that in modern times, because right now I couldn't care less about this stuff happening in modern times. It's almost like an afterthought of an echo of what big thing happened back in the day.
That's an excellent call, but it's an echo. You're feeling the reverb of something that you felt was really significant early on.
Right. So if this story, and I think that it probably is, because I mean it has to. I mean Bancroft's. What he's showing me is very good. So I'm hopeful that it's. But it needs to come faster. I agree. It needs to come faster. Because he's losing me, because I can't go through another book where it's more echoes. I need the story to start. I need it to start being important. What's happening in modern times?
You want him to give it to you harder, is what I'm hearing, Dillard.
Because I mean, Elle is just. I mean, all she is to me is just, huh? What? Who am I? Where is this? Huh?
Dillard's begging to be thrown on the mattress and ravaged by Bancroft's storytelling.
Pull my hair, punch me in my lower back.
Exactly. Yeah, an interesting take, guys.
I did not expect to hear Dillard say "donkey punch me" now.
All of you have the same grievance. You just want more. You feel like you're getting teased too much.
It seems like taffy that has been stretched incredibly thin that has beautiful pictures on it and words. That's how I would describe it. We're stretching a beautiful
really
story,
good,
really,
but you're
thin.
losing me.
Yep.
And yeah.
Come on, Bancroft. You got to move more quickly to second base. These guys have been languishing at first for...
My nipples they're raw.
No.
Come on, put it in already.
Too many dates. Yeah. Well, speaking of keeping people, hanging on and waiting for him, we're just waiting on Bancroft. So the minute he jumps in and gives us the fulfillment of his company, we'll definitely jump into the interview part. Ask him some deeper questions.
Yeah, and for those of you that were confused as to my earlier comment about the Bard, Michael chooses to, in his front matter, quote Hamlet and not cite Shakespeare. And that just slightly bugged me. Like, everybody knows who wrote Hamlet, but dude, cite the author. Just kind of bugged me.
Well, speaking
Ever
of the
so
author,
slightly.
here's Michael Bancroft.
You're
Greetings.
all wrong. You don't understand my genius.
Okay.
Not the foot I would have let off with, but
This panel came to bury Bancroft, not to praise him.
Not to praise him. Oh gosh.
There we are.
I didn't think of that, Aldous, actually. I probably should have done that. You're right. Yeah. The Hamlet.
Well, clearly, Hamlet wrote the quote, so I don't know who the Shakespeare guy is you're talking about.
Yeah. Yes, some things are better in hindsight,
Yeah.
Remember stuff.
Well, so this story has been gestating for a long time, Michael. From last time we spoke, I remember you told me that you've been developing this and refining it,
Refining it, especially these first two books.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of the criticisms are what I suspected you guys might say. Some new ones in there, which is good. Always good to hear the...
All going according to plan is what you're saying to us.
All going according to how, like, making something like this, I guess for me, it was like something was set into motion a long time ago. And that cannot be stopped or reconfigured now that that's been set in motion long ago. If I went back knowing what I know now, a lot of the criticisms that you guys have levied against the book, I would have addressed from the get-go. But having said that, it's that doesn't mean things can't be molded and improved upon. And I think I made great strides in making those improvements from book 1 to book 2. However, a lot of those things, again, book 2 was, I don't know, I'd say about halfway done when I started, like really getting a better handle on a lot of this stuff. But so that a lot of that had to be reworked, and then the other half of the book as well had to be done. But it's funny, like the pacing, the speed, a lot of this stuff, it's like, that's stuff that Joe and I are actively in discussion over now, figuring out how to take what would have maybe before, say, for instance, this book is 100 pages. Okay, how do we get that down to 60 and get it a lot more punchier and, lose some of that stuff that, like Aldous said, slows down the story or is even potentially superfluous or what Dillard said, it's like I don't really have that connection yet with these characters, so don't need to spend as much time on that stuff. So yeah, like that's all actually, as bitter as a pill it is to swallow. I mean, everyone has to take their medicine when they put a piece of work out there, and that's
Especially if it's a suppository. So
depends on the delivery method.
yeah.
You're not really helping. I was gonna say, well, Red, you're not really helping those Dungeoneer accusations there, are you?
I'm doubling down.
Yeah, okay.
As hard as that is to hear, it's not that hard. It's just you gotta hear it. You gotta like stand there.
Yeah.
It's actually encouraging because almost all this stuff is stuff that we're currently working on for the third book.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this will be the first book where Joe and I have been in collaboration together from the absolute get-go. Whereas the first two books, Joe came in, after a lot of the sort of groundwork and the art had already been, established. So yeah, that's
Joe is your like former co-host. I forget what was his last name?
Joe Fulton.
Fulton.
Yeah. Albino Thunderbuns, man, and he is missed. Okay. He is vastly missed.
Isn't he? Isn't he? Sometimes I see a clip, it'll get shared around of an old show, and there's Joe, and I go, oh.
Yeah, Joe was great, and he's had a lot going on in his personal life, but we all miss Joe. Those of us that remember him fondly.
Yeah, and I think it's better for him that he's not on the internet during these crazy times, I think.
Oh, nice segue there, because I do want to ask about the crazy times.
I've got just a couple questions.
Oh, thanks a lot, Twitless.
Brass show. But how many? What is when the trade paperback for Lucent comes out? How many installments will it include? Just to kind of give me a picture of like how the scope of what you're currently doing.
We are figuring out whether it's going to be 5 or 6.
Okay.
And that's sort of the work that I'm doing at the moment is essentially how much can we compress it, because obviously at the moment the story has been incredibly decompressed, and originally, I don't know, I can't remember, but it was probably more like 7, 8, or 9 or something when I first plotted the whole story out. And that throughout the years I've been able to say, okay, that kind of plot line can just be condensed into this or whatever, and we got it down to 6, but I would like to get it to 5 if I can. So that's
I would say this. I mean, if you continue funding at the goal that you're at and you're comfortable and you're making a profit, keep on doing what you're doing, because obviously your customer base likes that. By no means change just because we're telling you to change if you're making a profit. But your story, I think, would benefit from it, unless it. And I got 2 questions for you, I guess, on that topic. One, you do something in the entire course of the book, and I see this a lot in modern comics, and I don't see it in classic comics. You alternate between a white and a black background for the page. Mm-hmm. Why? Mm-hmm. You'll have one page, like if you go to page 26 and 27, they're on black backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And then you go to an interior shot on page 27 and 28 that are interior, and you go with a white background. I don't understand this constant flipping of the background just based off of the exposition of the scene, because it's not it almost drifts it for me. It pulls me out because you're not establishing any kind of consistency through the course of the book. So I'm curious on that, like why you would pick that. In my head, you want one consistent background for the course of the book, unless you're doing like a main like panel with a lot of insets over the top of it.
I mean, there's no answer to that other than just that stylistically the choice I went with, from sort of scene to scene, break to break. I have no visual preference for black or white. I like them both. And I feel like some of them work better with black and some of them work better with white. And usually it's not always, it's not a hard and fast rule. I'm not like pedantic about it, but usually, if they're going to be outside at night, it would be black. If they're inside, it would be white. If they're outside in the daytime, it would be white.
But then you go down to like page 39, 40, and I've got 39 that's got a white background where they're inside at night, and then 40 it's a black background, and it's the same page. I'm on a right left page here, so that kind of just struck me, and it's one of the things that I always key in on is what's the background shade, because again,
I hadn't really considered it as something that could pull someone out of a story. The thinking there in that transition was they're going from inside where it's lit to the corridor and hallway and another room where the lights aren't on. And it was, to me, it's just like a little bit of a extra scene kind of. So
one thing.
But then on page 43, they're running through a hallway that's not illuminated, and you've got a white background. So
all this, I'm not defending it. I will say that I think just in modern comics, because they have tried to emulate film so much, that the black background is overtaking the white one, just because it implies a more cinematic experience, kind of like when you darken the lights and you've got your film screen. So I really think it's just a sign of the times. It might be conscious, it might be unconscious, but I think it's indicative of just how much comics are continuing to pull from film.
But if they were pulling from film, then I would expect to see a gradient background that flows with the panel down the page. And I don't see that. Everybody's always picking these. It's either white or black, or like a light gray. And I don't get the assumption, because if you're going with the readability of a page, you should be doing a fade, and nobody does fades.
As in a color gradient.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, honestly, I hadn't really put, large amount of thought into it. I made my decision many years ago about how I wanted to do it, and I just sort of have continued on doing it like that since. I didn't really. I don't know. It for me that I wouldn't even really notice it. So.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because you make some what I'm assuming are conscious decisions. Unlike if you go to page, what page is this? It's towards the end, so it's 45, 40, or 46, 47. You've got panel 1 and panel 2 that are shorter than panel 3, but then you extend panel 3 out into the gutter line, just a little bit towards the bleed, and then you retract panels 4 and 5. And I don't understand why. Like, why would you not just make that concise and square, as you did on the previous page? What's the extenuated influence? I don't get the extenuated influence on panel 3 with it extending further into the gutter mark.
Pull out your rulers, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be measuring today.
No, I'm sorry, Twitless. These things matter. You're stacking panels. If you're going to stack panels, there has to be a reason.
I'm surprised that I'm not the only one who's paying this much attention to.
If you're going to ask, and why I'm asking the question is because much, much earlier there is a panel. It's on page 20. It's on page 30 of the digital, where we have 6 stacked panels that are expertly done. It is just brilliant in how you dial down into the city. And I know you understand it because you're showing that you understand it right here. And then you later on violate the rule that you're following here. And I don't understand the dichotomy of that. And I know I'm getting super technical, but it bothers me because I'm autistic in this way.
Well, the reason I decided to do that is because
one panel up, well read, or one page up.
One page up. The zoom down.
Yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. This is one of my most favorite pages in this book. I love this.
Yeah, I like that. I like that page too. Again, there's no more explanation other than I like the look of it. I like the look of the layout. That's it.
Yeah, but
I guess you disagree.
Layouts are pretty hot.
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, obviously in, modern American comics, the layout it's a lot about, being really dynamic and everything like that. I haven't really focused too much on that in terms of where I want to put my attention. I'd much rather focus on the story and the art and the actual what's inside the panels. And as well, I think could be, these are my first two comics. I think it's sort of like there is an element of learning to walk before you run, rather than trying to be like Kenneth Rocafort or something. Get good at get the foundations down as you want to do it first.
One thing that comes to mind through this discussion is what all this is partly, I think, pointing out is kind of what it sounds like what you're saying. If correct me if I'm wrong, Mike Bancroft, but you're talking about
Mr. Bancroft.
Mr. Bancroft,
Mr. Mike Bancroft,
Mr. Sir Bancroft, please. No, how you're arranging the because you're not doing what American comics have often done with the page layouts. You are paying very special attention to how you vary your box placement, because essentially what you've got is you have all these frames on the page, and if you just do the same frame pattern over and over again, it can be repetitive. And so, like, you're clearly playing with variance there. What all this?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you exactly what I do. Mm-hmm. I divide the page into 3 horizontally, and then I divide those panels according to story, and then I make them either taller or what is it, short, like wider, whatever it is, longer, wider, higher, whatever it is, according to how I would like to frame that panel.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's pretty much it. That's like the extent of it.
So what all this is bringing up, and this is interesting because like it just shows a different perspective. What all this is bringing up is essentially the Terry Grunston calls it the hyperframe, which is basically if you look at the entire, especially if you look at the both hyperframes on both verso recto, both left and right. So if you look at the entire thing from that entire view of how the squares line up, that's where you start to go, why is that square lined up so oddly? It's like looking at those what's that pattern where you cram all the squares in really awkwardly to fit them into
it's the tessellation pattern should imply, when you're doing the layout, importance of the panel, because you're laying the panels out so that if one panel has extreme extenuation, it's going to have importance. And I don't understand, because in that layered panel that we're looking at right now, in that nice stacked list, it's clearly indicative. But when you go later to the page that I was referencing, I don't see it. I don't understand it. Because I can't, and maybe it's one of those things like we were talking about, that this book does have the onion effect, and you might have to go 3 or 4 books in before you're going to understand why that one panel is extenuated. And then, okay, oh my God, back then at this page he did this, and it makes sense. I don't want Bancroft to ruin it, but if that's what he's going for, okay, that's fine. It bugs me.
I think it just breaks down to a difference in how you and how different people look at the page, right? Because what Bancroft was just saying is he's looking more at the panels themselves, and you're looking at like a step past that.
Well, I don't think when you read a comic you look at the panels themselves. I think you look at the page layout. The page layout tells you how your eye line goes.
Michael, I wanted to ask why you decided, it was brought up earlier, that this story, it seemed really well suited for a TV series or a novel, but you chose the comic book format. And I'm curious, in your mind and framing and theming, why did comics seem the most appropriate? Is the Lucent actually a superhero story, or is it something else?
No, it's not a superhero story, although it has powers. It's actually, when I think about it, and this wasn't planned, but when I think about it, that it's almost kind of like a side premise. If people did have extraordinary powers, the last thing they would do is become a superhero. And that sort of exploring that, I didn't set out to do that at all, but it just like that sort of must have come out from my subconscious somewhere. And when I say that, I mean they're not going to take up a moniker and put on a costume, although certainly people do wear different outfits, and that'll become more prevalent later on. So no, I wouldn't classify it as superhero story. I wouldn't even classify it an action story, though there will be increasing action in there. And the story itself started as just a story, and I was writing writing prose, and I did toy with the idea of it becoming a novel, and I tried that for a while. It didn't really work out the way I wanted to. I don't know if that was a skill issue or it just the story wasn't really jiving right. I mean, I think it could definitely be a TV show or a movie or whatever, absolutely. But I mean, I don't have any access to that. So when I discovered European books, that was the first time I saw something, because up until then it had just been mostly American superhero stuff. It was the first time I saw this medium, graphic novels, in a way that reminded me of how I felt about this story that I had been struggling with in my head and on the page. It felt like, oh, this is it. Like it's like this. And yeah, and I just dove right in, for better or worse. And I think that's what really has caused a lot of what you guys are talking about today. I mean, when I started, I didn't know anyone. I don't know of any scene. I didn't really, I grew up reading comics, but I never really got involved in any way in making them. So, I just said, well, what are people doing now? And then I found web comics. So it is interesting that Aldous brings that up, that, this would work better as a periodical, because that's how it started. I was releasing, I think, a couple of pages every fortnight or something like that for a couple of years at least, I think, and building an audience that way. And that was great. I loved it. The experience was fantastic. The only issue with it was I didn't at the time have any way of monetizing that. And then, the whole crowdfunding boom came around, and I thought, all right, well, I'll throw my hat into that ring. We'll see how we go. And I completely understand the criticisms you guys have in terms of the pacing of the story, this kind of story in this kind of format, released on this kind of schedule, 100%. And I am actually considering, Aldous, now that there's global comics, doing exactly that, and trying to get more stuff out in smaller bits as we go, and then later on put out the how many pages I've got.
I think your story, I think the story you want to tell, and everything that we just talked about with, you're talking, oh, I don't know if it's 5 or 6. If you do that, then make it 6, because then you're releasing on a standard schedule. And there's so many books that you can look at the collected works and you go, well, now that I have the full collection, as Twitless and I said at the very initiation of this show, when this is all over, I'm sure it'll all work. But right now we've got such a small selection that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I would say this. I look at Richard Corbin's Den as a perfect example. If you were to pick up a collected omnibus of Den right now and just read the first 2 stories, you're going to go, oh my, this doesn't work. It has so many problems. But if you read the whole thing, you're like, this is brilliant. And it's a classic for a classic because of what it is as a whole. You're just not there yet. And I think if you go with that periodic release, it gives you the influx of coin that you need to complete the thing. And then you can get to that point where you're in that conversation of, okay, now I'm able to publish it, and I'm going to publish it in snippets, but I'm releasing it monthly.
The alternative, of course, is to change the pacing and structure of each individual unit graphic novel so that it hits more of the reader expectations for works that come out and in the periods that you're dealing with.
But he's already 2 issues in. I don't see him changing the pacing of the story at this point. I think he's more apt and more beneficial to adapt to the modern release schedule. and go to something that he can reach more people on a monthly basis. And then I think he'd see a larger return, because what we've seen consistently is, whether you look at Order the Stick or even Penny Arcade, if you have a long-standing audience that is building with your story, they will buy your published work, because everybody wants it in published form, because everybody understands, hey, at the end of the day, the internet is finite. Nothing lasts forever. Things can disappear, and we want them in hardbound because we want physical media. You always want physical media.
I really like the Order of the Stick reference because it's a great webcomic. I would say that I don't think it's impossible to alter pacing and structure a bit, because I don't think you would have to I don't think you have to break how the story is being told. It would simply be ending your album, essentially, right? The next edition or volume we get, in a place that satisfies the reader. And I think that's the real critical thing here. And the consensus we all had through the discussion was we needed to be satisfied on particular points. I think you could still do that. I'm not saying you're wrong, Aldous, about the regular updates through web. I'm just saying that alternatively, I think that it is still possible to do this method, but to address some of these issues.
Well, what kind of market feedback are you getting right now, Michael? Because it's one thing, to be here on the panel and to have these more detailed discussions, but in terms of your customer base, what kind of response have you seen so far?
It's been very positive. I mean, you would expect that from people who follow you and support you, but they really seem to like it in terms of the way the story is going and everything. I have had people reach out saying what they're hoping to see from the third one, which I think it all seems to be pretty in line with what you guys have said as well. The sorts of things that they're looking to get. So that's encouraging. I think everyone involved, including myself, seems to be on the same page, that they feel like, all right, this is a intriguing start. Obviously, not perfect. Nothing is. Has issues, and let's address those let's get these in the next couple of books, especially. And I'm going to do my best to get as many of them into the next one that I possibly can without going too far away from where I've been. But like Twitler said, I do actually plan on compressing the pacing a little, only because I feel like now, the way I see it is, Painted Death is, in the greater story, the end of the opening act, and now there's nothing left to set up anymore. All the characters that are going to be in the story have either been seen or mentioned, and Ella is well and truly ensconced in this crazy world now. She's in, and now it is a matter of establishing, letting the story run its course, and all the stuff that you guys talked about will be revealed in the course of that.
Oh, I mean, yes, that would be great, because I think all these men are demanding status.
Yeah,
I've been teasing too long.
No, I'm very interested to know why Ella is more important than Homeboy in the Cloak, or the guy in the Bloodbath, or Damon, or the grandpa, or the guy that uses the coffee. Why is she more important?
Mm-hmm.
I know that takes time to set up, and that it could take a long time to even reveal that. Maybe the reveal is the climax of the story.
I mean, I don't mind. No, the reveal isn't the climax. I don't mind saying that is actually revealed in the next book. And when I say the next book, I don't mean Fractured Mind, by the way, because Fractured Mind is a supplemental book. I mean the next book in the series, Ember Crown.
Okay, right.
So there is a supplemental that I've been sort of doing on the side with Rod Looper for a while. which is a one-shot action, more action-focused inside the dream. You get to see actually a little bit more of that stuff that you guys were enjoying. You know, that the bit of the craziness of the dream world and everything, which is stuff that I love as well. Yeah, and I'm building towards essentially. Probably too slow for your guys' tastes. As I get here.
What are
Well,
your
I guess
action?
here, as a question to you, Mike, is what book do you compare this to? What when you look at your pacing, when you look at your storytelling methodology, like what is the book that you're closest to?
I don't know if I can answer that, Aldous. I don't know.
Do you have action inspirations?
Do I have what? Sorry?
Inspirations for how you do action? Do you have particular movies that you think of? And
Well, there's I guess to rephrase, because I don't want to. If it's too hard to pin down to one thing for this book,
Yeah.
what are the books that you enjoy? It's like when you look at Bande Dessinée, right? Like, because the closest thing that I have to what I've read.
That's the second time you said that. What is that word?
It's actually bande dessinée.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
Of course, let the academic.
You can pronounce
me.
you can pronounce foreign words however you want. That's my motto. I mean,
But
you don't have
when
to.
you're
stick to
talking
that
about
now.
European graphic novels, like the closest one to what you, at least what you've done so far, that I think you're associating to is like the Long John Silver series.
To answer
Okay.
Dylan's question, it's French for drawn strips. It's basically the word for comics, but
It's
it's not weighed with the genre.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
a Frenchman's comics, so smelly and
There's another
flavorful.
series by that same creator, Mathieu Lafray, called Prophet.
Okay.
I don't know what the English translation is. I mean, it's the same word, obviously, but the English version has a different name, is what I'm saying. And that's a story of a sort of researcher adventurer kind of guy who finds a book that opens up a portal to like a demon world. Now, this doesn't sound anything like the Lucent, I understand, but it's all about he finds himself in between the real world and hell, essentially, and these demons coming out of it. And it is a lot of, if you see it, you'll see it's a lot of, especially in terms of, these backgrounds and the cityscapes and stuff like that. I did draw heavily, influence on that, but also just the whole idea of representing strange things, coming out of, this other world sort of thing.
I'd like to. Can I follow up on that question? I'd like to ask you about, in terms of influences, what you're comfortable speaking of about this, some of the mythological thread tapestry you're weaving here. We see that you definitely have the mythological angle from, the Babylonian aspect with, or Sumerian epic with Gilgamesh, and then you've got
Specifically Tablet 9. He's hyper focused on Tablet 9,
and then we have references to Roman times, I think, and then we've got references to like the Knights Templar kind of thing. So there's these interesting webs there, but then there's also the fact that we know that in Australia specifically, there's the dreaming, is a huge, or an important concept for natives there, and so which has not yet made an appearance. And so I'm just curious as to what you can tell us about how the web, I guess, of influences you're pulling mythologically speaking. I'm seeing some very interesting nodes, and I'm curious as to like how you see that and what your what kind of.
It's interesting because I've put these parts in there, mostly what appear to be prologues, and I haven't really expanded on that at all, other than to drop visual clues, Easter eggs, throughout the book. I don't personally see them, even though they sort of quasi function as a prologue. I personally don't even see them as a prologue. they are, the way I see it is you've got different tracks, running forward in time, and we're just seeing those tracks at different periods in history. It's all part of the same story, obviously. I mean, everyone would hopefully understand that. And so essentially what I'm doing is, I mean, if you start, the way it all came about is I start with the premise that in this world, some people have an ability to tap into a kind of power that they tap into through their dreams. And this has always existed. And it's always been part of who we are as a people, as a civilization, as a society. It's just that everyday folk like you and I don't have any knowledge of that. And the evidence of it is littered throughout history, except it's been retold in a way to hide the truth, essentially. And that's how you end up with secret societies who are, keeping it all for themselves, all that sort of stuff. So essentially, I don't know, I'm just a kind of history guy. I love mythology, always studied it, Greek, recently the Sumerian stuff. And I just really want to bring that into my story in a way that I enjoy stories more if I feel like, oh, there's a possibility that this could actually be happening out there right now, and I'm not aware of it. And yeah, so that's why I actually did have some Aboriginal dreaming stuff in a very early draft. I did subsequently drop it for no reason other than I just couldn't get it to work in the story that I was writing at the time. Not saying it wouldn't appear in there again, but there's a group of people that I've mentioned in the story that have been brought up very offhandedly by Isham, the kind of lava guy.
Right.
They will appear in the story, and you will see a whole range more of different mythologies and cultures and stuff being represented in the book. Essentially what I'm saying is all of history in the Lucent, all of history is connected to this thing, and we are just you and I are just not aware of it. Ella clearly is not aware of it. She's about to become very aware of it.
So if so when it comes to dreaming, your this is my last question, swear. Or maybe not swear, but about dreaming, what is your vision for how dreams work? Because one thing I've noticed is that it's very we often think about dreams as being very trippy sort of things, where we could and in comics, right, you could fully cartoon that, right, because of the creatures you can see, the distortions of anatomy we sometimes see in our dreams, like our teeth fall out in them in times, like just the fact that those in our recurring dreams, they're just so, they can either be fanciful, but your vision seems a little maybe closer to Inception's, which is more like I said, a little more clinical. So I would love to hear you just invite you to speak a little bit more about what either limitations or maybe not limitations, but how are you envisioning the dream, what dreams are, and is that going to change as the series goes on? Is it mostly going to be kind of more of a muted kind of matrixy feel? That's kind of what I've been sensing so far. Apart from the water teleportation is really kind of a really nice bit there. But walk us through a little more about how you approach, dreams. Does this relate to how you dream in real life?
It does actually.
Okay.
And that's sort of where it stems from. Big, long time lucid dreamer.
Okay.
And the thing that I learned in all my time being involved in lucid dreaming was that the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's weird. It's like a skill. And you can become fantastic at it. And another thing that happens when you do that is your dreams become clearer, more lifelike, more like reality, with a very strange twist of you be almost like a god in the dream world. You can do almost anything you want.
Sorry, what is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming is when you're aware you're dreaming.
Yeah.
Is it a practice? Like you have to do something to?
Not always, not usually, but it can become, and you can actually become lucid from a waking conscious state. That is a real thing that I've experienced personally. And that plays into the story as well. So far we've only seen Ella in a dream world, and Ella is and I haven't gotten into the story yet, but Ella, it is something about the people who are more in tuned to this thing,
Right.
is that they are always lucid when they dream.
Mm-hmm.
And that has created, like in her dreams, that's why it is very kind of realistic, but with fantastical things. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a realistic setting, but they're jumping off the top of buildings and swinging around and doing strange things like that.
I have noticed when I've had the lucid dreams that they my ability to the fantastical actually kind of like dies down, because like because my brain starts seeing things more realistically, so I can't like do something like
you
fly.
actually start marveling at how lifelike it is. You're like, I can't believe my brain can construct this. This is insane. I'm not, my eyes are closed, but I'm seeing and I'm touching what looks to me indistinguishable from real world. It's a very surreal experience. Now, having said that, obviously, like Dillard alluded to, he wants that cool historical stuff and the weird, funky, crazy stuff, and that is the trajectory that the series is on. That, in fact, Ella's life in the real world, mundane, and even though she lives a pretty unusual dream life, it has, it hasn't been like super dangerous or crazy or anything. I mean, she's got this weird dream boyfriend. Obviously, that's unusual, but things are going to get, pretty freaky when the real world and the dream world and ending up colliding with these, these groups that are sort of fighting with each other. And they have some very funky, extremely powerful powers themselves.
It's not that I want it to be more fantastical. It really isn't. I just want it to, I guess, tie in. And the only thing I've seen so far, and maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I missed something important, but the only thing I've ever seen that ties in this to present day is the guy coming out of the bloodbath and making reference to, we found, or it might have been this dude or something, right? That was the only thing that I've seen that's like ties those two worlds together. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the why.
How these different timeline tracks actually interact, how they actually relate to each other. Yeah. And that's
like, I hate to keep bringing it up, but like in Harry Potter, right? This is what I'm for some reason that keeps coming to mind, is like you find out very early that the reason that Harry is important is because he's the only one who can defeat Voldemort. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, you don't know how or why, but that's the reason.
That's the quintessential. That's the Joseph Campbell, the Hero of a Thousand Faces. That's the basic. That's what Rowling did. Is she just took that and then extended it out and stretched the taffy, and it worked, because how she stretched the taffy was she created steps. As the taffy gets stretched of that general story, you have steps for that character to go through, and each time he's defeating, but he grows, because there's a step back and he has a loss, but he extends it. He makes it into a win. And I can see that you're doing that, Bancroft, and I like it. Again, there's so many beautiful moments. It's just, there's also moments like you've got this, where is it? It's the moment of where the bad guy uses the same powers as Damon. Page. He kills like essentially the butler, which I'm assuming is the butler. And but that's the only moment that you get that it's like, okay, now I know that he's like Damon, because Damon uses that same power earlier and then later, and I've got a marker, but there's no weight to it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of the it sounds like a lot of the lack of weight, pardon the pun, is because of the amount of weight I'm making people wait to get to the next stuff.
Yes.
And I have always and continue to understand that, and will strive to in the future to improve the way I'm doing that. I guess
Now,
the way
here's the question though. Do you understand the delineation of the difference of releasing like a book every 2 years versus doing something like this and releasing it in segments, and why that why that matters?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, that's what I was doing with Webtoon, and it was going very well in terms of story. In terms of interaction, people were really enjoying it, getting those regular updates. And again, the only downside to that, really, the only downside was it was like I didn't make any money, and it's hard to justify the amount of time.
Right, but now you have a substantial backer base. So what would hold you back? What's keeping you?
Nothing. I've been looking into it. I mean, I'm going to have the Global Comics guy on next week, chat about it. They actually have a web comic side of their site, which is very exciting. And for the first time again in a long time, because it was sort of a 2018 to 2022 was kind of like a whirlwind of craziness. It's probably not going to come around again. And we're coming out of that now, well and truly. Everyone's looking to what they're going to do next. So I am 100% seriously considering, and especially, I know all these issues, as much as anyone. I read a lot of these crowd funds as well. I'm as close to, I'm the person who's the most closest to my own story. So I know what's happening. I know what's coming, and I know how it's going to affect people if they don't find out certain things by a certain time.
I disagree with you a little bit. Just because the whole bump up of whether you want to call it Comicsgate or whether you want to call it just that frame of reference of 2018 to 2022 or 2021, that's just bringing a lot of comic fans in that aren't comic readers. You've got a lot of people that just buy things and don't read.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you want people to read your issues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I've always sort of kind of lamented, as much as I feel completely blessed the position that I'm in, that I got like 1,000 people on 2 crowd funds to back me. Actually, I sold more books on this one because those backers bought like hardcovers and soft covers. So it was actually more like 1,400 books or something. So there was actually growth there, which is crazy. So I don't want to like put any of that down. Obviously, that's been amazing for me.
No, and with every issue, you should always do a collected volume that has everything up to this point. I mean, that's to your benefit.
But what I do miss is when I was on Webtoons. I mean, I had like 25,000 subscribers over there, and as often as I could update, I did, and every time I did, there'd be like 100 to 200 comments about the story. None of it was about, oh, I want to support you, Bancroft. I like you, which is always nice anyway. But it was all about, I can't wait to see, what's Ella going to do and what's Damon, all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, no, I'm totally open to getting back into that for sure.
Right, and I think this is a good point to mention. As critical as I've been over your book, I'm still gonna. I have not backed this yet. I will be backing it, but I've changed my backing model. So I'm definitely gonna buy a copy of this, and I'm looking forward to your next release. And I think that's important to say because I want to see where this is headed. But you've only got me, and I think Dillard said it earlier, for like, man, maybe 1 or 2 more.
Mm-hmm.
That if you continue the format that you've got now, like eventually I'm going to get bored.
judging off what you said, as long as you continue to actually like the story, I mean, there's no guarantee that
The
you'll
story's
even-
great. I really dig what you're doing, and I think the most important aspect of what the hook was, when you talk about, you know, establishing the hook and reestablishing it in each issue, is doing that callback to the Gilgamesh story, and how much research it was evident you did into that. You were very clear that you understood Tablet 9. And
Mhm.
if that's as important as I think it is in the story, then man, I'm really looking forward to where 3 is going. And if you manage to hook me on 3, then 4 is going to be an easy sell.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, and I feel confident then because, like I said, this one, Joe and I were working together to actually do that thing that you said to me back in the first one, that I knew I wouldn't be able to do 100% in this one because, so much of it has already been, I've made setups. I had the story there, and then it's going into the third book, so I couldn't really change too much, even though I knew guys like yourself who do really want that, story within the one book. That's something that we're really actually looking to deliver in the third one, where there is a much clearer, defined, in narrative sense, goal that Ella and Damon are striving for. Whether they achieve it or fail, read the book to find out. But then, that's actually a thing. There's an arc within the book itself. So I am confident that this will appeal more to a reader like you, and also as well, like a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying, Damon is very annoying in that he keeps stringing her along. I get that, and a lot of that stuff is,
I like Damon I like Damon as a character, partly because I sometimes get a little tired of the super special girl who's the key to everything. So I like the fact that Damon is so competent and a badass, and I hope he stays that way. I think the issue is just what the just the pacing with his and how he's phrasing his dialogue.
Yeah.
Just that I was looking just for that Kyle Reese moment where it's like the Terminator's after you. If they get you, the timeline's screwed.
Yeah, and I love that moment as well. By the way, I love that they're in a pipe, aren't they, or something? Or is it in the car?
I think the first one's in the car because it's like it won't stop. It won't stop until you're dead. It never gets tired. It has no fear. It just spells out like this is the thing that's after you.
And it's been too long since I watched that movie, but maybe I should actually watch that again. I totally hear that. And the third book will be the first kind of moments in a while. If we think back to like when she was working at when she was before that first dream where everything goes haywire. The actual what's happening in the story is kind of slowed down a bit, where the characters get a moment to actually stop. And Ella was hoping for that when they got to that house, the big mansion, but Damon wasn't going to have it. So, and then the order arrived, and what happened. So that in the third book there will be that moment essentially.
So I think that's a cliche that people repeat a lot, that people were buying the books and not reading them essentially. And I know it's true in my case, but in my case, I understand the reasons why that is. Like I'm a cause backer for the most part.
Well, you're also illiterate.
I'm also illiterate. So I have that.
It's because you're a rabbit. Rabbits don't
handicap.
need to read.
No, I can't read.
Okay.
But I choose not to read.
Oh, okay.
Not that I can't.
That's it.
It's a choice, damn it.
You choose to be illiterate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm making a statement against literacy.
It's
But
the Law and Order SVU. Like I date women, but I have sex with men.
Exactly. You might be illiterate, but so in terms of me thinking I'm a cause backer, really I'm illiterate, but how many people do you think actually fall in that category where they have alternative reasons why they're backing these books and then ultimately not reading them? Like, I suspect more people are actually reading them
Yeah, how
than
many
what we
people do you think
assume.
are only backing you because you're hot?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased, but I would think more people are reading my books than others. I think more people are reading someone like Narwhal's books, Reenie's books. I think a lot of it comes down to how you're promoting them, what you're saying when you promote them, the kinds of promotion that you're doing. So, I mean, if you're out there saying we gotta back this book because we gotta beat, we gotta show this other whatever. I mean, yeah, you're gonna get a lot of people backing it just to support you. Like, you're selling kind of YouTube merchandise at that point.
The hate backing. I mean, that's happened on a few
Spite
campaigns.
backing, yeah.
Spike, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely done it before. I've gotten a couple of books where I was like, oh, it turns out I actually don't really have any interest in reading this. But not many, maybe 5 I've done that on, and I've got, I think, 180 books or so. And the ones I've gotten that I haven't read, it's only just a timing thing. It's only just, all right, I got a stack there. Everyone's got that stack.
Mhm.
A lot of people on Webtoons, they will get their audience, and then there's nothing really to do with that audience other than just keep giving them more content. But a lot of people will link their Patreon. That's how a lot of people on Webtoons make their money, is by having people support them through Patreon to continue making that content they're enjoying. Is that something you tried, and did you find any success with that? If you did,
I did that. I think I still have a Patreon. I think I still have patrons. I don't do anything with it, but I think I didn't really do anything with it at the time either. I think I've got like, I don't know, 10 or so.
Really, from 25,000 subscribers, just 10.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's brutal.
That's what it's like. I mean, people are on Webtoons to read free comics.
Yeah,
so that's really why it's like it can be really difficult. But if I think back, I had 25,000 followers on Webtoons, but I probably had 300 Twitter followers. I had no YouTube channel. No one really knew anything about me other than, I guess, an avatar that was posting up these web comics. I mean, I did have interactions with readers. We sort of had that kind of parasocial relationship in terms of like, oh, hey, great to see you again, sort of thing. But yeah, it was very difficult to turn that into revenue. To me, the revenue is just I can then say to my wife, oh, it makes sense that I sit in this cottage drawing for 8 hours. It's not just a complete waste of my time. There's people who are actually going to pay for this. That's sort of why having the revenue is important. And I think Aldous is right. I do have a paying audience now. It does make sense to kind of see if I can go that route again, especially now seeing that I think a lot of the sort of buzz and energy around crowdfunding is, I don't want to say it's waning, but it's like people are a lot more selective in 2024 than they were in 2018. A lot.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is actually a good thing. It means people have to work harder and they have to try new things. They have to rattle some.
You actually have to tell a good
Band of
story.
the Crow selling for $3 a book. Like, let's see if we
Right.
can get how many backers we can get. That sort of stuff.
Well, and that's a great example of what do you do to hook an audience. Well, to hook an audience, this is they know they're selling at a loss, but they have enough faith in their book that they're going to sell at a loss for this hook, this preview, so that when they eventually finish it and it gets published, you're gonna want to buy it. And that's what more people should do, is understand the market and understand that there's crowdfunding is not the end all be all. That's the start. And then there's cons, and there's your own site, and there's other aspects of selling that can get you to the point where you need to be, but this is not the end all be all.
Yeah, and I've always had that feeling as well. I do love crowdfunding. I find it fun, and I like backing projects that I think look cool. I like promoting people. I like doing it myself, as hard as it all is. But no, I agree 100% that even for my story, like you guys saying, like this release schedule doesn't really jive that well with the kind of story I'm telling. And you know, I always just saw this period of my life as this is me just doing whatever I can to see if I can get this story friggin' finished into a volume. And this is what it's going to take to sort of get that there. And, you know, I would love for the people who are reading it now to stay reading it the whole way, but I can't take that for granted. But my hope is that, you know, once this is all done, yeah, I have that story, that finished story. So no one's stopping, you know, at the point of, say, the end of Painted Death and having to wait, you know, for the next part. They've got the whole thing there. That is my ultimate goal. You know, at some point in the future.
Well, I think at 2 books of over $50,000, you're doing you're doing an excellent job.
I feel completely blessed. I mean, I 100% am fully aware of the unique position that I'm in, as in these are my first 2 books ever. I started with, like I said, no Twitter followers, no YouTube channel, and the very few people came over from Webtoons out of that 25,000 to, you know, back a physical copy.
Do you know the number? How would you know that number?
Because I gave them a link, a special link.
Oh.
Where they got a discount, I think, like I don't know, $3 off or something.
Yeah, you've been following me for a long time. Here you go.
Exactly. Yeah, you know, you've read that
you're invested.
You've been a supporter. Exactly. Here, come. I think like I don't know, 5.
Is that because I know that there have been a few breakout cases. Is it just the exception that proves the rule? With stuff like Lore Olympus and stuff on there that.
Well, Laura, you can't throw Lore Olympus into that. That's an entirely different animal, man.
That's what I said. Is that just the exception that proves the rule?
That's the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
And it's not even the exception. That had publisher involvement before it even went to Webtoon. So you can't use that as a great example. That was an example before we learned a lot about what was happening behind the scenes 3, 4, or 5 years ago.
What were those?
There was a deal in place before it even hit.
Before it hit Webtoon?
Yeah.
Like a book deal?
It was if you get X, then yes, book deal.
Okay.
And so there was inherent promotion behind that because of that deal.
Okay.
So it's a little Lore Olympus is a different animal. You can't use that as a metric. I think Order of the Stick's a much better metric. Personally, I know it's old. I know it's been around for a long time, but that was organic. And I think you're hard pressed now to find a lot of organic examples of that because of that happened. So now you've got publishers doing deals like what you saw with Lore Olympus.
Okay.
Well, so where do we go from here? Mike, oh, sorry, go ahead. You wanted to?
Oh, I was just going to expand on that and say I think it's like a long-term thing, and you know it's probably it's many years of building audiences and creating that, building that all up, and I've been at this now for years myself, and it's going well so far, but it takes time to build that up. And I think when I was on Webtoons, I remember doing it for just 2 years, and they didn't really have any social media presence and everything. So I believe, I mean, we can see people have done it. One of my favorite creators, Max Smith, he had a web comic for
Yeah,
a
Scurry.
long time, and he did fantastic on his crowdfund. So it's not like we don't have examples of that happening in the past.
Now, here's a question for you, Bancroft, because I love Scurry. Max Smith did an excellent book. It's absolutely fantastic. I backed it on Kickstarter going back to volume 1. But now you can get the complete set for $20, soft cover.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Does that diminish you as a backer early on? If you supported him on his rise up to now, where he's now on Amazon and has a publishing deal, and you can get the entire collection for less than $20, does that diminish your support early on?
No, not in any. I can't even think of how it could.
Well, no,
Because-
you spent more for what you could get now.
Yeah, but I've got a hardcover, numbered, signed, slipcase edition. That's a completely different book. It's a completely different object. It's like, I mean,
But you back
let
in
me break it to you like this.
I mean,
There's a big phenomenon that's happening right now that people are just completely just uninterested in everything because they missed the boat. Like, if for instance, if you want to talk about something that's like a phenomenon, right? You need to have other people around you experiencing it at the same time. Like, I can go out and I can watch The Walking Dead, having never seen it, and not get the same fulfillment or experience from going to the watch parties with my brother and going to his house, and every week we would go and watch the next episode as it came out. That made it so much better. And that's why I think that crowdfunding can't really go away, because you get that experience. You experience these things with other people.
Like, I was there.
Yeah, dude. Like we do not have something that's like a watershed moment. These are the watershed moments when these things release, when they fund, when they go live. You know, these are the watershed moments. You just don't have that anymore. Like, the last time people did that was like the very first season of American Idol, and it's missing. And people love that stuff.
Isn't there also like an implicit understanding that you are backing these things so that they can exist, and that if you weren't doing that, that ground level investment, that this business would never get off the ground and there wouldn't be a collected edition at some point? So I always thought that that's the reason why you do crowdfunding and you give to crowdfunding. It's not because you think the product is going to be the most amazing thing. You just want to see this business get started up and hope that it does great things later on.
I think there was a point at which that was true, and I think that's been massively abused by creators to the point that I'm a consumer advocate. I will always promote the best value for whoever's watching me, talking about what I promote. And whether that's a new comic or whether that's a graphic novel that's in the independent scene, I'm always going to go and like, hey, what's the best value for your dollar? And 9 times out of 10, that's not a crowdfund, because most people are abusing crowdfunds. They're not doing like what Arvid's doing right now is the way you do a crowdfund. I'm going to give you a preview for my book that's going to be coming out, and it's going to be in another format, but this is a preview, and that's how I see it. For most people, and I understand there's a lot of smaller creators out there that are going, but what about us? Like, hey, get with the times. I'm sorry. You need to, when you look at a crowdfund, that's just step 1. Step 2 is go to a con and sell your book. So step 3 is have a site that you can move your book at. And it's not a short game. This is a long play. And it's not something that you can ever get like, oh, I'm going to make 5 figures or I'm going to make 6 figures on one book. Nobody knows you. And even if they do know you, they're going to want to get their book in their hands before people start talking about it. It's going to take a long time to get any kind of resonance off of it. And when you're talking about, I need to get X in order to even do this book. Well, if X is too high and you can't fund it, then you need to reevaluate why you're doing this, because it's not there's no panacea that's a universal.
That's why actually I do like crowdfunding in that sense, is that in its kind of purest form, it's sort of like, is there an audience for this? And if it doesn't fund, then there's your answer. There isn't an audience for it. So, okay, move on to the next thing. Maybe there's an audience for the next thing. But then, yeah, you also do, like you said, you know, you'll find people sort of using it as a means to just kind of like get an injection of cash. And yeah, that can sort of dilute the original purpose of it. I think that's true.
Well, when you, sorry, go ahead, Twiddless.
I was also going to say that it's some of that conversation is also, how do I put this? There's also space for people to do art in either the hobbyist sense or the sense that it's like, I'm going to make this story no matter whether or not it sells. And sometimes the sheer commitment to that is what eventually gets an audience anyway. So the idea, I just want to push back a little bit against the idea that, oh, if I put an idea out and into the crowdfund sphere and it didn't fund, it means there's no market for it and I move on to the next thing. And that is a way of doing things. And it's probably
there's a
good
market
idea
for absolutely everything, but it all depends on how you market it. And that's 90% of the problem, is that most people don't know how to market.
Well, my point is that there's also doing art because it's like, I want this story to be told. I don't care who else.
Well, okay, can we all
cares.
admit though that like the latest furry like comic doesn't, like, people need to go and beat those people with sticks. Like just
How did you know,
because
how
it's
did
fun
you know I was
doesn't mean it's
talking about
good.
furries?
Because you're an academic. And
I've
you have to be a furry.
incidentally, Twitless, I've always put myself into that camp that
Okay, right.
I'm making this story. I hope people will come along with me along the way and back crowdfunds and stuff. But this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to make it, and I'm going to have it, and I'm going to see it through to the end. And you know, I did it many years before I even released anything. Where I was working on it, I did it a couple of years after I had it on Webtoons, and I was doing it, and I wasn't making any money on it. And you know, now I am thankfully making some money on it. I mean, anyone who's done a crowdfund knows it's not actually a whole lot of money, but it is some money, so that's good. But more importantly, I've built an audience, and I'll continue making it. But if the crowdfunding thing, for whatever reason, doesn't pan out, I'll continue making it, and I'll you know, I always said I can always go back to Webtoon. Now it seems like I can go to Global Comics, which is cool because I feel like that's probably
you're doing it, and you continue to do it, and you're finding success, and I'm happy for you about that. And the longer you do it, the more content you're going to have to be able to market it, break it apart, you know, splice it up, put it out in different ways. I think that you've struck on something here that enough people like that it's going to be something that you can just pick up and run with. I mean, congratulations. It's great. And
thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's the hope and that's the dream, and that's my plan. You know, I'm still as passionate and focused on seeing it to fruition than I was way back when I first envisioned it. So I'm happy that people are
fortunate that something that you have passion about and you put out there that resonates enough with people.
Yeah,
that you can continue doing it. Gee whiz,
yeah, well, I 100%, because you know, I promote guys and they don't have the same sort of their books don't resonate as well with as many people as mine do. So you know, I see it firsthand how kind of fortunate I am to be in the position that I am. I'm going to do my best not to take that for granted and continue making it better.
I always thought I was brilliant. This is proof.
That should be a great location to stop things. But I really do want to ask one question about when you said people are being more selective with their crowdfunds. And you recently did a stream where you mentioned that people were dividing crowdfunding up. And it seemed like whether or not people could be supported or they shouldn't be supported. There were all these questions about who's entitled to support. And that goes to what everybody is saying, you know, whether or not a project is going to fund based on its own merit or based on some implicit whim of the backers to be inclined to support it. And so is there still room in some of these locations, however you want to call it, some of these camps for crowdfunding to still be successful? Like, is it?
I think
necessarily-
absolutely, and I think like we don't need to, pussyfoot around it.
Sure.
In the sort of main CG group, I think we're seeing that play out. I think if you look at the success of Inglorious Rex 3, I think that's a direct reflection on the steps that Shane took to build his own website, put out a professional book on a regular schedule. And you don't agree?
No, I don't agree. I don't think that's a professional book.
Well, okay, that's
Not in a story context.
Okay. No.
Oh, those are fighting words.
I don't want to get into the actual critique of the book. I'm saying, he put out his book, and he delivered it, and then he just went into the next campaign, and I've no reason to believe that he won't put it out in whatever his time
I
frame
want to
is.
stop you right there, Bancroft. Why does story suddenly not matter?
Oh my gosh.
I'm saying I'm not talking about that side of it. I'm talking about
So story
another
doesn't
one.
matter. It's just presentation.
Well,
I think
people
there's
might like the story, Aldous. They clearly do.
I think Bancroft, is it fair to say you're talking about the professionalism of the operation?
I'm talking about.
I would agree with that, but I certainly wouldn't agree with
I'm
the
talking
story.
about the crowd, the people who are putting out books, putting out crowd funds regularly, and then fulfilling them regularly.
Well, I find it interesting also that you suggest that example. Like that's why.
Well, I mean, he's probably the most. He's probably got the biggest campaign going at the moment. I think.
I think
so.
he passed
Why would you
200K.
not select like Godlike or Cyberfrog 3?
Well, I mean,
because both of those campaigns are failing. They're comparative to their previous successor.
Well, I think a lot of people are.
Are you trying to get Bancroft in trouble?
No, I think that's the point I'm making. In trouble on Friday, but
I think that's the point I'm making, though. That a lot of people see that it takes Ethan a long time to get out his books, and they don't want to wait. Whereas Shane didn't do that. And I'm thinking about guys like Aaron Lopresti as well, and Graham Nolan, who have. So as far as I'm aware,
right, and both of those I think would be better examples. If you look at Wrath of God 1 and 2 versus Wrath of God 3, that's a great example. If you look at all of Graham Nolan's books, those are also a great example. It's interesting you picked Inglorious Rex 3 as an example when.
Well, I'm saying he seems to be doing very well, don't you think? Like in terms of the numbers.
I think Shane has done an excellent job of harnessing his customer base. But yeah, when you talk about the context of a full story like we were referencing.
I wasn't even really thinking about any of the story and stuff like that. I thought Red's question was more about with these different factions and and crowdfunding.
Yeah, this is your stupid question, Red. I tried to end this on a positive note. Look at the conversation now.
Well, nobody gave me a chance to interject.
Those guys are really showing that there is. It's just people are responding to sort of how regularly are they coming out and that sort of stuff. So
what I mean is, so where's there room for the small creator in that equation? Somebody who's an unproven commodity and hoping to build up their business, which is what crowdfunding is supposed to be for. It's not really supposed to be a regular means of sales, to show consistency and to continue building up your business in perpetuity. Mm-hmm. But the small creators who actually are going to use crowdfunding for its intended use. And actually, a lot of the people that you promote on your channel, like where does that format go if there isn't a culture any longer to support those people? Has that migrated? Has it evolved? Is it even existent anymore?
Ooh. Well, the sort of, I mean, especially the kind of greater Comicsgate YouTube promotional network, in terms of we're talking, used to be dozens of channels that you could everyone was hopping over from one to the other freely. That doesn't really exist anymore. That's all much more factionalized and into groups. So that avenue is going away.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are feeling the pinch of that. But I don't know if it's because of that or if people are just cooling to new crowdfunders, new creators. I don't quite know.
Well, the greater example is Razor Fist, and where his project might be going, and whether or not he's going to continue any future attempts, or Yellow Flash, and what might happen with Ripascend, and if you also got Drunk 3PO releasing.
Well,
his
I
book
think if you've got an established audience, you are in a good position no matter what.
right.
You have all the options open to you. Whereas if you are an unknown first or second timer, it's I don't think it's been this hard since at least pre CG days when I think I backed 2 or 3 crowdfunds before CG, and I don't think they were particularly big. And when I look back at that market, I don't think people were getting huge numbers. So it might just be the market is kind of reverting.
Well, it's restabilizing to it.
Yeah,
Again, it goes back to the comic readers versus comic fans.
It's tough out there. It's if you're a smaller person with no audience, and I've had 3 or 4 people in this year say, if this doesn't work, this is it, I'm done. And
So non-YouTube small creator crowdfunding is dead.
It's not dead. It's
No.
you've got to have an angle.
You got to work harder.
Focus on your audience and
yeah.
Acclaim that audience. Give them a reason to back you. There has to be that.
Used to be a time, let's say 2021, where you could just come up with a book and say, I'm going to hit all these streams, and you could do pretty well depending on the book.
Right.
You could do maybe 10, maybe even 20,000. I think that time has sort of passed. Now you've really got to either have your own audience, have your own mechanism of marketing, and most people never did that. They would purely rely 100% on going on other people's streams.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. The non-YouTube small creator avenue is not there anymore.
So, well, look, hey, maybe that's what global comics can be. My next comic, the one that I'm putting out, Fractured Mind, I'm going to put out the first 12 pages on global comics for free, and promote that, and then see if maybe that will entice some new readers to come and back the actual comic when it comes to.
Hell yeah, man! I think that's the way to go. I think it's brilliant. I think it follows. I think it's the modern adaptation of the print model, of the serialization model. I think that's fantastic. I think more people should try that. And if you get a hook, because you can see your readers, and it gives you the indication of, hey, I've got something that's going to resonate here, or I don't.
Yeah. I mean, look, everything's in flux. Everything's in flux. People that were cool with each other a year ago are no longer cool with each other, but then they are cool with each other again a month later. I don't know. It's all, and then on top of that, you read the chats, go around anywhere where people are hanging around crowdfunds, and they're like, I don't back crowdfunds anymore, or I'm not backing this guy anymore, or I'm only going to back books that are done, or whatever it is. Things are changing, and people just creators have to change with that and figure out a way to keep the whole thing going.
What impacted that more, do you think? Changes in spending priorities for customers, or just hostility among different crowdfund campaigns?
I think it's probably all of it all together. I think it's probably a perfect storm. Some people might agree, some people might disagree, but I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm definitely feeling the economic pinch in terms of a cost of living. So that hit. And then, we had shipping prices just going through the roof. That hit. But I can't deny that, certain creators that I was once really gung ho about supporting. I became less gung ho, and I think a lot of people have had that sentiment as well. They've made that clear, in
So
chats and stuff.
with that pinch, you still would have left that money aside to support that creator had they remained in your good graces.
I don't know. I have, like Alice was alluding to earlier, the story is mattering more and more. I stopped supporting people who I didn't know if the story were going to be any good, and I would wait. Whereas before, I might get into the swing of things and like, oh, it's a launch party, I got to back this guy day one, and get swept up in the whole fun of it and everything, which was much more likely to happen 2019 to 2021. Whereas these days, even if it's it all looks great, I'll probably still just wait until I hear about it, until it gets in people's hands and people say, oh no, this is a good book, or at least it was readable. Because sometimes you get something that's not even readable.
Or like Arvid's doing, it's at such an extreme price.
Yeah, Arvid was. Yeah, exactly. That's completely different.
It's a no-brainer because, for
exactly.
$3 with free shipping, why not?
Nothing to lose.
It almost sounds like you're describing the early days as like, a comic book stripper party where like you have a wad of cash and you're having a good time at the launch party. And so you just blow it all on these like supposed hot looking chicks who are all plasticed up and don't look so great when you're sober. But now it's like you're looking to settle down, and it's like, no, who's actually got
maybe
the goods.
Yeah, I guess that's what I say. It's a bit of everything. It's a bit of all of that rolled into one.
What a way to describe it.
Yeah. You knew I was going to come up with that example.
Like I said, I got 180 books here.
A lot of strippers.
When I crowdfunded books, but when I think back, okay, what ones actually really stuck with me and I still think about and go, oh, that was a great experience.
Which one gave you herpes?
If we stick with the metaphor, we're probably talking 10, 10 of those were really like, oh yeah, that was not only was that a good purchase, that was a great read. I'm not saying the whole 170 others I regret. I mean, some of them I do, because it just didn't turn out what I thought it would be. But most of those are just, they're all right, but kind of forgettable.
C'est la vie.
Here's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't really have any other regrets in that sense. Again, like I said, I'm in a blessed position. It's been a whole lot of fun. I love having a YouTube channel and hanging with the chat, and I still love talking comics. I still love promoting them. I still love seeing new comics come about. So I hope that will all continue in the future. I understand. Look, things might turn around in terms of the economy. I think if the economy turned around, that would be a big deal in terms of just, freeing things up a bit. Everything it's all like what I call earlier, like a perfect storm of things at the moment.
I do think we're in a entertainment pivot where I just think that the old formats for entertainment are dying away. And even though people can't afford it right now, they do want these more personalized avenues to getting their entertainment and having it catered a little bit more to their specific tastes. So you get smaller audiences, but you get more committed audiences for a lot of things. And
everything. Remember, we all, I don't know. It depends how old you are, but I mean, when I was a kid, I went to school and it was Ninja Turtles. That's it. It was Ninja Turtles now. Everything was Ninja Turtles. So I was like, oh, I got to go watch Ninja Turtles. All right. Oh, no, I got to go get a toy. That was what it was. Whereas now my kids might watch a certain YouTube channel.
Exactly.
And their friends never heard of that channel.
Yeah. I think that happened with the music industry. It started with Napster and then it continued, and you get all kinds of artists that just, make music in their basement, and they can be as big as the industry artists who get payola and stuff, the musicians.
Oh man. Do you want to go down that road?
Not really.
That's an entirely different discussion.
But I'm just saying,
the 1996 Telecommunications Act destroyed music.
Right.
But
But I'm just saying, for comics and then for shows and just everything for news in particular, it seems to be going in that direction. People would rather get it from a social media influencer
Yeah.
than, the old traditional big mainstay formats, newspapers and TV.
Yeah,
So
Twitter's the biggest news site in the world now.
yeah, which is
Users.
crazy when you think about it, but that is the way it's going. People want things personalized and catered. They want priorities that they think are important to be directly delivered to them, rather than served up a generic menu of what everybody's supposed to be consuming at that moment. So I see this thing concentrating more. I think you just need to figure out ways to tap into the right audiences. I'm just trying to figure out how people are planning to do that and what are the right ways to actually.
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about this time is, whereas if you had a cool idea like the Ninja Turtles, I mean, you really need to be that 1 in a million thing that gets seen by the right guy in the right time at the right place, and it blows up. Whereas now there are millions of artists, millions. I mean, there's more than you could ever hope to know in all fields that have their fan base, wherever many it is, that make a living off it and get to make their art and for their fan base. And, maybe they grow a little bit here, over the decades, or, maybe they were big once, now they shrunk down, but it's still enough to keep going. And whatever it is, it's like the internet and crowdfunding for us and whatever it is, whatever platforms and blah, 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 and social media hasn't made that possible. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It does it, but you got to work at it, and that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, I think it opens the door for like radically divergent forms of storytelling, and you can tell stories about themes that were just untouchable before, and there's an audience for them. People who want to have certain things expressed in stories or certain kinds of stories in their entertainment. But
you could write a story about a red-headed chick and her dream boyfriend, and then spend the first 16 pages on Gilgamesh. If you were that crazy,
totally mess up the paneling and like still find an audience. How did you manage? Bankrupt.
And we've come full circle. That is a perfect place to end it.
All right, everybody. So thanks a lot for watching. I'm going to be uploading little shorts, and I'm going to try to start building the channel for once. I know it's been years and it's finally due. It's time to start making it happen. So look forward to those. Let's quickly do some shilling before we jump off. We've got first up, if I can find the link, if I have even an ounce of competence. Okay, let's start with Aldous. Aldous, tell us about your channel.
Well, which one?
The one I have up.
My main channel is old school radio from the 1930s, but the Gutter is it's a comic focused show, and we've changed tact in the last 2 months. The Gutter is now only comic focused. It's nothing else. If you go back into some of our history, we'll delve into some of our interests, whether it's film or television. But the Gutter now is only only comics. And each week we, JP and I, Raiden Radio, the author of Eudaimonia, and Noirlum, which is a fantastic book. Everybody should check out it. Both of them are excellent, but he's a really good writer, and we analyze comics, and sometimes we have special guests. This last week we had Global Frequency Radio on, both Neff and Frequency Girl, and we looked at the Image Comics Ghost Machine release of Hyde Street, and it was a good turn. But we've also looked at The Crooked Man, which was Hellboy and the adaptation that just came out, which I highly recommend everybody watch, and a bunch of other books. But right now we're going to be finalizing our pumpkin spice season for the spooky season of Halloween. Next week, this Friday, with a look at Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones's Dracula, Volume 1, The Impaler. So I'd encourage everybody to check it out because that book is worthy of some discussion for what happens out there.
Check out Aldous on the Gutter if you want more Aldous and more of his esoteric topics that he delves into quite deeply. So good times, good watching. Absolutely. Let's see who we got next on deck. Of course, we got Michael Bancroft.
No.
Shill your site, sir.
TheLucentComic.com for all your Lucent needs. We've got soft covers. We've got hard covers. We have puzzles, t-shirts, everything.
Lucent Comics, the flamethrower.
We got pens. We got mugs. No, we don't have any of that. But we will have trading cards soon. I'm working on a trading card set, which is something I always wanted to introduce. I think I'm going to do them a little bit different to everyone else. So look forward to that. And follow me on Twitter or X at the Lucent Comic. And you can find me on YouTube as Michael Bancroft, where I do art shares, I do draw streams, I do promo streams, I do trivia streams sometimes, and just try and enjoy myself.
That's what it's all about. As long as you're enjoying yourself, the audience will be enjoying you. And that's what you really want, isn't it?
I want the audience to enjoy me.
All right, Twitless, make the audience enjoy you. Tell us about...
I don't know if that's possible.
Tell us about Omega Girl.
Yeah, check out modern day but classic superhero storytelling. I'm on issue 4. Issue 5 is done. I just need to get it listed to Indie Planet. So you have, several issues of standalone storytelling. I've been training myself to do just kind of like one and done kind of floppy situations. I will be building into a longer story arc, so I'm going to be doing that as well. But yeah, have fun.
Have fun. Enjoying Twitless.
It's late. It's late. I can't.
Where is the deep academic dive into what?
That's my job. Okay, I'll say it this way: my job is to do deep academia stuff, and even with comics. But I also just have an inner child that never got over loving Superman, and I just love superhero storytelling. I love straightforward superhero storytelling. It is like it brings life to me. So why would I want to just take my day job?
Between Twitless and I is at some point, because we are relatively the same age, I think, but at some point there was a schism that happened, and I got tired of Cape shit, and he didn't.
Nope, never.
Yeah, I think I was about 14, 15 when that happened, and yeah, I don't know. I went from loving it so much to just.
You know what it was for me? It was when I discovered Matt Wagner's The Sandman.
Oh my gosh. I am reading Golden Age Superman right now, and I am having the time of my life.
Oh, dude,
it does not get better.
We are not talking about the same thing right now.
Yeah, I know.
It never got better.
Amazing.
It's all great. I love it all.
I recently got volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Golden Age Superman at Ollie's for $5. And I've got like 9,000 pages of happiness ahead of me that I could. It's just eternal. I'm good for like the next 5 years. I could never read another comic and just focus on those and be happy.
I actually have Golden Age Supermans from the 40s, Australian reprints. So
okay.
I don't know if they're worth anything, but they have that GoldenAge format and that Golden Age smell.
Oh yeah. That's the money right there.
Yeah.
Right. So my love,
printing and everything.
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to wrap up.
Yeah, my love of that and Silver Age and Bronze and everything else, I put it into Omega Girl. So that's just it's my love letter.
I would like to thank the panel for helping me set up Dillard's ode to Golden Age Cape shit. It's called the Mighty Golden Patriot.
Yeah.
Yellow Flash. I'm gonna play your trailer, Dillard, and then you can.
Man, I can't wait to get my hands on this. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Now that you are all deaf, Dillard, tell us about the Mighty Golden Patriot.
What?
Dillard, can you hear me?
Dillard isn't gone, so I'll
Oh, I'm
say
sorry,
I really
I was,
like those.
Sorry. Gee whiz.
Your chance to make it. You're blowing it, Dillard.
Oh man, blew it on the well-read show.
This is the place to blow it.
I will never financially recover from that.
So tell us about the Mighty Golden Patriot.
Oh yeah, it's coming soon. But more importantly, the Buckler Canadian Tussle is now being fulfilled.
There we go.
Ah,
It's at Dark Gifts right now. All the books are in. He's already been front-loaded the payment. Shipping has started yesterday, so people should be receiving those books fairly soon. And then once that's done, we're going to be doing a collected works so far of the Buckler before we move on to the next book. And it's going to be everything from the very first little ash can, Descent. It's going to have Ascendancy, the Temple of Polar Twilight, and it's also going to be having Canadian Tussle in there as well. It's one big floppy book.
Absolutely.
And I got some awesome custom match books in the mail today. Check this out. Check out these cool little match books.
Whoa. You did custom. Oh my God. Dude.
Wait a sec.
That is great.
Got little custom match books. The Buckler.
I am on 4 packs of cigarettes since
I was going to say, I've never heard all this more excited than.
I know.
Yeah.
Finally,
On the back it says Dillard Draws on YouTube.
I will buy a pack of Luckies and light up with those. That I am. That
I got a bunch of packs. Ooh, I got about 10 of these boxes. So that's great, and that's going to be going out with the new book, and the collected works. And then don't forget to follow me on YouTube. We're closing in on 1,200 backers or 1,200 subscribers, so that's great. My YouTube is Dillard Draws. You can find me on Twitter or X. Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. ArtStation.
I fully agree with Daly in the chat. I'm not one for like chibi stickers or fucking magnets. I like bookmarks because I read.
Me neither.
But now you have hit it. You have hit a spot with matches, and I need a Buckler matchbook, man.
There's a tchotchke for everyone, it seems.
That's gonna hit the spot, but you're killing me because I'm just in the midst of quitting smoking. But I will buy a pack of Luckies for you.
Don't be a quitter like Aldo.
Just so I can dude, Zin is my savior. I'm not quitting nicotine, I'm just quitting smoking.
Matchbooks are the best way to light your one-hit pipe with, so definitely get some.
There you go. Oh, now we're relevant with the one.
Yeah. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be back again soon. More reviews. We'll see all of you later. Have a good night.
Later.